μέρους του Επιστημονικού Συλλόγου N, σας καλωσορίζουμε στο 4ο Εκπαιδευτικό Συμπόσιο Naoussa. So, on behalf of the Scientific Association EN, would like to welcome you at the 4th Naoussa Educational Symposium. My name is Christos Janulakis, and I'm the Vice President. This year's symposium would not be feasible without the contribution of the Executive Board and the Organizing Committee. So many thanks to all those who have made the symposium a reality, not just this year, but for the past 4 consecutive years as well. Our association's title, EN, or N in Greek, and the two initials stand for the Greek words E, έρευνα, research, and N, noisy, cognition. And our main purpose is to redefine education on all levels. To this extent, the 4th symposium and the theme is founded upon the concept of research and frontiers in 3 interlaid dimensions: space, Earth, and the inner self. And upon these 3 dimensions, we shall all problematize and realize how we can expand our boundaries and ultimately connect our inner selves. Allow me to extend our heartfelt thanks to our 3 keynote speakers who came all the way to Naoussa to share their philosophical and scientific approaches. Thank you to Vladimir Pletser, Patxi, Acero, and Nikolaos Divinis. We extend our gratitude to the educational entity Ensyntropy for its organizational support and scientific support all those years. We would like to thank the municipality of the heroic city of Naoussa and the Cultural Center of Aristotle School for always being a hospital venue to our events. Many thanks to our hospitality sponsor, Boutique Hotel Paliapoli, and our communication sponsor, iNaoussa. Of course, we would like to thank all of you for being with us today, and of course, our live stream participants. The event is currently being live streamed to different parts of the world. And the live stream would not have occurred without the technical support of Thomas and Elias Tsimpris, who are at the backstage right now supporting us all the way through. Our association has a very close relationship to the Aristotle School for a plethora of reasons, but primarily due to the unique educational approach of Aristotle and his relationship to his beloved student, Alexander the Great. Back in those times, the universal language was Greek, and we did host the past 3 symposia in the Greek language. Well, now the universal language is English, and we decided to expand our international outreach through our keynote speakers and the live stream. And that is the reason that this year's symposium will be hosted in English. So with no further ado, I would like to pass it on to our association secretary, Mr. Mai Trifon, for further information on the symposium schedule and our speakers. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Chrysostomos, for the introduction. In terms of today's session entitled Expanding Horizons, the following inquiry comes to surface. How can we effectively utilize research in order to go beyond our personal boundaries? Because then we may acquire the capacity to dispute existing norms and truly expand on social and scientific frontiers. To this end, our 3 speakers will introduce their keynote speeches on 3 respective frontier dimensions: space research, research on Earth, and inner research. Tomorrow morning, we will commence at 10 a.m. with a transformative exploration session. Why is it called transformative? Because our speakers will pose respective, provocative, philosophical challenges. For instance, the challenges of traveling in space and what sacrifices are we ready to make for the stars? As far as the Earth is concerned, have we appreciated Earth's true potential, or we simply protect ourselves? At the end of the day, we will shed light on the question, can we truly explore the cosmos without first knowing ourselves? Overall, an exploration of self-awareness as a parallel to space and Earth exploration will be illustrated. At the end of both today's and tomorrow morning session, we have set apart a certain time frame for interactive debates and inquiries from all of you, so you're welcome to share any questions you might have with us. At this point, we must mention that on Saturday afternoon, we will come into closer contact with all of these, facing challenges in practice through the interactive workshop, Mapping the Universe with Us, inspired by Nikolaos. Once more, many thanks to our invited speakers for sharing their time, expertise, and vision with us. First, Vladimir, who is the Director of Space Training Operations and Blue Abyss, and has been recently selected as an astronaut candidate for a first mission on the Genesis spaceplane in 2029. Congratulations on this great accomplishment, Vladimir. Then, Patxi Acero. Patxi is a research engineer in the Fluid Dynamics and Thermal Sciences Laboratory at Chalmers University of Technology in Sweden. Patxi is also the director of the Air Mobility Emergency System project, integrating advanced aerial mobility solutions into emergency services. Last but not least, Nikolaos is the Chief Theoretical Knowledge Instructor at Greybird Pilot Academy based in Denmark. He is a writer and founder of Ensyntropy, where he explores the intersection of science, philosophy, and human introspection. At this point, we would like to invite Nikolaos for a brief presentation of Ensyntropy.
Thank you, Thomai. Because of my age. The wisdom. So, for centuries, entropy, a law of loss and of increasing disorder, has shaped our understanding of the universe. Yet, something within us resists that finality. What if the universe isn't falling apart, but unfolding towards wholeness, guided by a silent intelligence present in all things? This is what Ensyntropy is, the principle of unity. It's not something to be grasped, but something to awaken to. Not a path of escape, but a homecoming, an alchemy of remembering. Ensyntropy is the hidden order beneath apparent chaos. It's the force that draws the many back into the one, matter into meaning, fragments into form, self into source. It is the deep memory of unity written into every part of existence. Not the end, but the return. And now you will excuse me, I will also translate that to Greek, because also to honor my heritage. Για αιώνες, η εντροπία είναι ένας νόμος απώλειας, αυξανόμενης αταξίας, η οποία διαμόρφωσε την κατανόησή μας για το σύμπαν. Κι όμως κάτι μέσα μας αντιστέκεται σε αυτή την απολυτότητα. Κι αν το σύμπαν δεν καταραίει, αλλά ξεδιπλώνεται προς την πληρότητα, καθοδηγούμενο από μια σιωπηλή νοημοσύνη, αυτό είναι η ενσυντροπία, η αρχή της ενότητας. Δεν είναι κάτι που πρέπει να συλλάβουμε, αλλά ο δρόμος προς την αφύπνιση. Δεν είναι ένα μονοπάτι διαφυγής, αλλά η επιστροφή, η αλχημία του γίγνεσθε. Η ενσυντροπία είναι η κρυμμένη τάξη πίσω από το φαινομενικό χάος. Είναι η δύναμη που ελκύει τα μέρη πίσω στο ένα, την ύλη στο νόημα, τα θραύσματα στη μορφή, το εγώ στην πηγή. Είναι βαθιά μνήμη της ενότητας, γραμμένη σε κάθε πτυχή της ύπαρξης. Όχι το τέλος, αλλά η επιστροφή. Now, some words about the theme of the symposium. This symposium is not merely about ideas, it's about synthesis, a bridge between science and spirit, between observation and intuition, between the known and the unknown. It is a call to awaken the Ensyntropy within us, to remember that we are not separate from the cosmos, but expressions of its deepest longing to be infinite. Our theme speaks to this truth, from the infinite cosmos through the foundation of existence, towards the will to return into the embrace of the Father, the source of all. And now, also, the translation in Greek. But now you will excuse me that I would like also to add some more things for my Greek friends here. Αυτό το συμπόσιο δεν αφορά απλώς ιδέες, αφορά τη σύνθεση. Είναι μια γέφυρα ανάμεσα στην επιστήμη και το πνεύμα, ανάμεσα στην παρατήρηση και τη διαίσθηση, ανάμεσα στο γνωστό και το άγνωστο. Είναι ένα κάλεσμα για να αφυπνίσουμε το εσωντροπικό μέσα μας, να θυμηθούμε πως δεν είμαστε ξεχωριστοί από το σύμπαν, αλλά εκφράσεις της βαθύτερης επιθυμίας του απεριοριστή. Το θέμα του συμποσίου μας αναφέρεται σε αυτήν ακριβώς την αλήθεια, από το άπειρο σύμπαν στην ουσία της ύπαρξης και στη θέλησή μας να επιστρέψει στην αγκαλιά του Πατέρα. εξαπείρου προς τον αναγέννησης δια της νοήσεως. Καμιά φορά λυπάμαι που είμαι Έλληνας. Πραγματικά. Είμαστε κατάντια. Και δεν θα το μεταφράσω αυτό. Λυπάμαι πραγματικά. Και ονώνω ήτο. Thank you very much.
We thank you also, Nikolaos. And now invite Vladimir. The topic of his keynote speech is Space Research, Humanity's Next Step.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I'm very happy to be with you here. Yes, thank you. And also online, not only in presence, but also online. I would like to thank you all for your invitation. I'm very happy to be with you, especially in this beautiful surrounding, the school of Aristotle. You cannot dream better than that to speak about philosophical aspect of research in general. So I will tell you a bit about space research. Is that really the next step of mankind? Just a quick summary of who I am. My background is mechanical engineering. I have a master's of science in space geodesy and a doctorate in astrophysics. I work also now with Titan Space Industries, as it was said, as an astronaut designate. I'm also an astronaut candidate for Advancing X and Belgian astronaut as well, since '91, so it goes a long time. My passion for space is very old as well. I work at Blue Abyss now as a director of space sharing operation. Before that, I worked in Beijing, in China, at the Chinese Academy of Science for 2 years. And before that, I was physicist engineer at the European Space Agency, where I took care of coordination of the parabolic flight of ESA. I flew 7,398 parabola, which is representing 39 hours and a half, in equivalent to 26 orbit, a little bit more, plus 55 minutes at Mars gravity and 50 minutes at moon gravity as well, on the 14 aircraft, which is a world record as well. I also follow the development of payload, microgravity research payload, for mission on Spacelab, SpaceApp, and the ISS, and on the Russian Photon. I participate also on 3 Martian missions in the Arctic and then in the Utah Desert in 2002-2009. You will see here the little video showing training that I was lucky enough to follow during at the European Astronaut Center a few years ago. Underwater, it's EVA training underwater. It's quite interesting because you realize that, in fact, you do not have enough hands. Why is that? The protocol, the safety protocols call for you to be attached always with 2 points, 2 life-tethering points. So that means that whenever you move, before unhooking 1 point, you need to hook a 3rd point, and then you can unhook the first one and then move on. So at the same time that you do that, you have to carry something, so you have something attached to you, and you realize that you have only 2 hands. One, in fact, you need 3. And one of these hands is a left hand, so you need 3 right hands, basically. But it's very interesting, very doable. This is a family picture of the Belgian candidate astronaut. Here a picture during a medical exam at NASA, during one of these simulations in the Arctic, and that during a parabolic flight. So I will tell you a little bit more about parabolic flight, of course. So space research, yes, space, but it starts on Earth. Basically, microgravity research starts on Earth. These are the microgravity platform that we use. The drop tower, typically, where we can do free falling downward for 4 seconds, 4.5 seconds, or launch it from the bottom and then let it go up and down. Free fall, it doesn't mean that you go from top to bottom. It's not simply the motion from top to bottom. It's any motion which is only subjected to the force of gravity. So you can go up and then down, because the only force acting on the whatever you're launching, the vehicle that you're launching, is gravity. All other forces can be either nullified or neglected. Of course, here you still have a little bit of air friction, but that's why they do vacuum here in the drop tower. The second mean that we use our aircraft to do parabolic flight. I will develop that in a second. We use also sounding rocket launched from Sweden, from Kiruna, north of Sweden. We use also automatic platform, typically satellite, automatic satellite, around 300 kilometer altitude. And then the International Space Station, I will tell you a little bit about it as well, typically 350 to 400 kilometers. So these are the main payloads, the main platforms, sorry, that we use for research in microgravity. This is a plane that we use in Europe. It's Airbus A310. It's called 0G, it's his name. And the other plane that are used in the world is the 0G Corporation here. That's a Boeing 727 based in Florida. And the Russian Ilyushin EL-76 MDK. And you see in this position, it's a little bit strange position and very uncomfortable for this type of aircraft because it has to climb upward at an angle of typically 45 degrees. 45 degrees is quite a lot because normally big plane like that, they take off with an angle of 8, 10, 12, maximum 15 degrees. Here we are 3 times this maximum. Why is that? Because from, sorry, this button. From an horizontal flight at typically flight level 200, which is 6,700 meters more or less, with a speed of 335 knots, the pilot would accelerate the plane. The plane, of course, would increase its velocity and same time pull on the streak, on the command streak. So that means that the plane will go up and its velocity would increase at the beginning, but the rate of increase would slightly diminish because you go against the pull of gravity. When the angle, the climbing angle, reach 45 to 50 degrees, the pilot switch off the engine. There's no other force other than gravity acting on the plane. The plane to do its initial velocity, continue to climb, reach a maximum of flight level 280, typically 9,300 meters, at a very low speed, 130 knots, that's about 250, 260 kilometers per hour, which is extremely low for this huge plane. So the pilots always say, we do not fly the plane at that stage. We simply accompany a brick, a falling brick, because the plane behaves like a brick, basically. And then from here on, you're already in free fall, and you continue the free fall, but this time downward, until you reach an angle of 42, 45 degrees. And then again, the pilot put full thrust to the engine and come back through acceleration phase, again, to an horizontal flight. So 3 parts in the maneuver. The first one is the pull-up, that lasts 20 seconds, with an acceleration of 1.8 to 2G. The magic phase here in the middle, which is gives you the 0G, the microgravity, that lasts 20 seconds, 22 seconds, with a couple of seconds for transition. And then the pull-out phase, again, with the acceleration of 1.8 G for about 20 seconds. Now, I told you that the pilot switch off the engine at injection is not fully correct. It keeps enough thrust, so it diminishes the thrust, but keeping just enough to counterbalance the air drag. So the sum of all force other than gravity become 0. I have now a little video to show you that. On board which we can recreate, really recreate, zero gravity conditions, so the weightlessness state. And to achieve this, the pilot on board this plane will, from an horizontal flight, raise the nose of the aircraft up to an angle 40 degrees, same time putting full thrust to the engine, so accelerating up to 2G. After about 20 seconds, when the up angle is about 45 to 47 degrees, the pilot strongly reduces all engine thrust, only keeping enough thrust to counterbalance the air drag. At that moment, the plane is in free fall state, that is, the sum of all forces other than gravity acting on the plane is nil. The plane, due to its initial velocity, continues to climb, reach the maximum of the trajectory, and then start to dive down on the other side. When the diving angle reached 42 degrees, the pilot again pull full thrust of all the engine and accelerate for another period of 20 seconds, coming out of this dive and coming back to a normal horizontal flight. Now we are in the beginning of the pull-up phase, so the very first phase, where gradually the weight increased. Now my weight is increasing, is double. So now I'm about 150, 160 kilo. Of course, it's a little bit heavy to withstand, but you can see my face is now getting a little bit paler because all the blood is actually pulled down. The pilot announced the angle, the climbing out, 20, 30, and now we come to the injection point where all the engines are strongly reduced. You can hear also the noise is slightly reduced, and we start to float. And if I let the plane float,
It will float freely in front of me, and you can climb up to the ceiling like that, perfectly in 0G. Now the diving angle are announced 20, 30, and it's about time to come back on your feet for the pull-out, which is the other part, the other phase of 2G when the pilot accelerates, to come back eventually, ooh, this is getting heavy, to come back eventually to a 1G flight. Wow. And again, during this pull-out, acceleration can reach up to 1.8 to 2G, and our normal weight is then doubled with respect to the apparent weight on Earth. Hey, we are back on an horizontal flight, ready for the next parabola, which will take place in about 2 minutes. So we repeat this sequence of parabola to reach a maximum of 30 parabola in total. And during these 30 parabola, we have up to 10 minutes of microgravity. We perform 3 flights within the campaign, so that gives us 30 minutes of 0G. And if we have 3 campaigns per year, that is equivalent to 1 orbit around the Earth, equivalent to a space lab type of orbit around the Earth, or type of microgravity time we have on board the International Space Station.
So you see, that was my job for 30 years at the European Space Agency. So I'm always lucky to say that I never worked my life. I enjoyed my passion, and I was paid for that, so that was even better. A few comments also on this little video. You saw the little fish that was swimming and floating in the air and the water. Well, we brought him back alive, of course. He was very happy about his flight. We had still a long life, and he died eventually of old age, so that was perfectly fine. He survived his flight, basically. You see as well that there's no up and down in microgravity or in 0G. What gives you the feeling of up and down is gravity pulling you down. So the floor is the horizontal surface where you stand, where you walk, because gravity pulls you down. Nobody will go walk on the ceiling above your head. In 0G, you can go on top, on the ceiling, because there's no gravity to pull you down anymore. You see also, we did a lot of experiment there also, but it's always nice to have a little bit of fun. And here, I'm showing what you cannot do is floating upside down, so I'm risking my life to demonstrate what is forbidden to do. Well, we are asked not to floating in this position. Why? Because a pilot can, at any moment, abort the parabola maneuver and come back immediately to a 2G. So you don't want to land on your head with the double of your weight, of course. So you see also that we all wear a blue suit, except this guy, which is in orange. He is there to give us a hand in terms of operation. All these suits are made of special tissue, which is called Nomex, the same type of tissue that pilots of Formula One wears. It's a little bit of a flame retarder, so in case of an accident or in case of fire, this suit will protect us again for a couple of minutes in case of emergency. You see also that everything is covered with foam, the floor, the ceiling, the walls, and the racks as well, to avoid that idiots like me would not bump their head everywhere. Next step, we need to go a little bit higher, well actually much, much higher, to continue this research, this manned research, and this is on board the International Space Station. This is actually an enormous project that was launched more than 20 years ago, nearly 25 years ago. It's quite a large structure that was built. It took 12 years, 13 years to actually assemble it. To understand what it is, you need to see it in 3 parts. The first part is the structure. You have a central beam, which makes it 100 meters long, that was built piece by piece. So it was launched and assembled in space like a giant Lego game, you know, bit by bit. And then it carries also this solar panel on either side. And each solar panel, this is 40 meters long, so twice, that's 80 meters. So 80 meters by 100 meters, the size of a football pitch. It's enormous structure. The second part, you have to see also the module. Module are the pressurized volume there, where the astronauts are living. And among them, the first 2 were Russian modules, which were launched, the first one Zvezda in 98, the second one Zarya in 99, and then connected, you see, you don't see, but it's behind here, to the Node 1 that connect the US lab here, Destiny, and the Node 2 that was developed in Europe, to which is connect the European Laboratory Columbus, and on the other side, the Japanese module Kibo, which means hope in Japanese. And the third part, the vehicles, you see here one Russian vehicle that is always staying attached to the station. So it brings 3 cosmonauts or astronauts to the station, and it stays there attached to the station for 6 months. And it's the return vehicle, or in case of an accident or explosion or leak or anything, the astronaut can go to this vehicle and then leave it in emergency. There's also here a shuttle, which is no longer in use since 2011 now, and here an automatic cargo that is coming to actually connect here to the Russian side. So this huge structure was built and designed and used since now more than 25 years. And it's very interesting to see that since the year 2000, November 2000, so about 25 years now, we have astronauts and cosmonauts living permanently on board the station, which means that since now 25 years, the human race is traveling in space continuously. And that's a very important shift in paradigm. We are no longer living on Earth all the time. Not all humans are living on Earth at any time. This is an important step in our research in space, in our exploration of space. Of course, it's not far. It's only 400-kilometer altitude. But it's the first step. And that's important. Continuous presence in space. This is absolutely crucial. We have also... this is also an important thing. That's
and
one of the
hatches opened
astronauts,
up,
the Canadian
and we'll move
astronaut, to
inside the
explain
station and
the
greet our
feeling that
new
they have when they
crewmates.
arrive on board
It's so
the
nice
station.
to see them.
And
High fives,
find their
hugs,
friends again.
big smiles. Everyone's delighted to see each other. Moving into this big space station volume after the tiny confines of a Soyuz vehicle is also a bit surreal as well. It's a big living space, lots of cables, lots of hoses, a little bit overwhelming.
That's an important step also to understand, is that in space there are no longer boundaries. You do not see the boundaries on Earth between the country, but also on board the International Space Station, you have international crew, American, European, Japanese, Canadian, and Russian. So in space there's no barrier, there's no frontier, there's no war. Of course, war exists on Earth, unfortunately, yes. But there you see, people are happy to work together. People are happy to find themselves. And this friendship, this camaraderie is something really important, because you cannot, one country cannot go alone exploring space. It's really a mankind, a whole mankind activity and enterprise. And that's very important as well. That's why also the International Space Station project was proposed some years ago as a potential contender for the Nobel Peace Prize, because it keeps always people together. There we go. Yes. So what happened on this station? Well, here you have a few examples of little experiment. First one, and which is always interesting to see, is that liquids in space, in weightlessness, so in 0G, behaving very strangely. They form bubble like that, or drop, spherical drop, but that you can deform. You see here astronaut Wibo Ockels blowing on one of the drop of orange juice, and you see how it deforms. You can create also at the bottom of a needle and inject and also a bubble of air inside and see how it behaves. And then here, the Italian astronaut Paolo Nespoli would explain you also what happens.
Go down. We have this drinks bag that are like our cup. So they are completely closed. The water is inside. They have a special straw with a kind of a tap in there, because we need to close it. If we would not close the tap, this is what happens, which means water is going all over the place. And of course, we don't want it to go anywhere. We don't want it to go into the environment and to the equipment, and therefore we keep it contained all the time. It's very interesting, and it's fun to play once in a while.
So you see, it's a very strange environment in which you have to adapt, of course, with new rules, not new rules in physics, but new rules of behavior and understanding due to the weightlessness, the absence of effect of gravity. A quick word also about what happened to the human body in 0G. Well, there are several subsystems of the human body that are affected. The first one is the inner ear balance. The inner ear balance, it's a double system. You have the autolytic system, which are little of calcium, little stones, that normally weight on a nervous membrane. In 0G, the weight is no longer there, and this little stone can no longer weight. So there's one channel of information that goes to the brain normally that is suddenly cut. Information coming to the brain disappear. And the second system is the semicircle canal, where there you have liquid that rotates in these three semicircular canals, which are perpendicular to each other. And there also it is affected, which means that one very important source of information to the brain to see where is gravity, to feel where is gravity, and how your head and the rest of your body is compared to the gravity vector, is suddenly disappear. And that causes problem in a sense that it creates what is called the space adaptation syndrome, which means that the astronaut would feel sick at the beginning of its flight. It can last 24 hours, 48 hours, 2-3 days like that. You feel a bit nauseous, you feel a bit queasy, unsure of yourself. That's why at the beginning of a mission, nothing important is really foreseen in the schedule of an astronaut until it eventually gets adapted. It happens also during parabolic flight, but of course for shorter period of time. Second aspect is the cardiovascular system, which is quite affected. You see here 4 representation pre-flight, so that means in 1G basically. So normally in 1G the blood is coming down because it's pulled by gravity. The heart is pumping to bring it up and to bring it to circulate everywhere, to bring it to the brain as well. But there is also a difference in pressure. If the pressure level of the heart is taking as unity, it's double at the level of the feet, of the ankle, and it's about 2/3 at the level of the brain. And this gradient of pressure is normal here on Earth because we are used to that. We are born in this environment and we grow in this environment. In 0G, suddenly, gravity is no longer there. So that was pulling on the blood. So suddenly the blood is redistributed all over the body, and your pressure, the blood pressure, increase everywhere, especially in the head, but also around the heart. And there are baroreceptors around the heart that will feel that and would start to eliminate some fluid by natural ways, by urinating. And the astronaut, the first 2-3 days, will lose a lot of liquid, basically 2-3 liters, sometimes more, to adapt to this environment. The problem is after the mission, when they come back to Earth, of course, maybe there's not enough blood anymore to go along. So that means that it happens from time to time that we have astronauts fainting at the end of their mission once they come back to Earth, or they feel so weak as well. So that's why we have them doing a lot of experiment, a lot of exercise as well. Third aspect, that's in a long-term mission, the brain is affected as well. Not that we are thinking differently in microgravity, but somehow the brain waves are modified, so the frequency are modified. So some brain waves are more activated, some other are depleted, and somehow the brain, the electrical activity of the brain is slightly different. We observe also neuroplasticity, which means that we can identify which region of the brain is actually taking information of this new environment and that is imprinted in the brain in a plastic way, so it does not deform, it stays there forever. A big problem also is the bone demineralization. This is typically a bone. This is not human bone. This is a mice bone, the bone before the flight and then during the flight or after the flight. You see that the bone is disappearing. The bone tissue is disappearing basically because gravity is no longer there to pull on, to create the weight and to pull on the body downward. And the bone finally has no longer its function to support the body of the weight. And then there is this strange unbalance between two systems, the osteoblastic cell that would create the new tissue and the osteoclastic cell that would make the old tissue disappear. And they're still undecided whether there's one system that works more or the other system that works less. And scientists are making a lot of experiments on that, and they still do not understand. But this is very important to understand as well, because it brings a little bit of similarity with a sickness here that we have here on Earth that affects all the people, which is called osteoporosis. So the astronauts on board the space station, who are usually people in very good health, in 6 months of time would develop a similar approach to osteoporosis as a normal person here on Earth in 1G environment during 50 years or 50 or 60 years of their life. So space research is very important at this stage. And then another problem are the what is called the SANS, the space adaptation neuro syndrome, basically. And this is typically where the eye is affected. I told you that the blood and other liquid are going up in the body in 0G, so you have a slight overpressure in the head, and nothing was really thought about that. People at the beginning of the space flight were more concerned about the brain. It's true that the brain is a little bit more under pressure, but also they realized since now 10 years, 10, 15 years, that the eyes is affected quite badly as well, because it's slightly flattened, and the optical nerve sometimes is also compressed. And this is increasing with time. And that's creating quite a large problem for very long duration mission. If we want to go to Mars, typically flight is 6, 8 months or so, between 6 and 8 months. Maybe some astronauts would react so strongly that they can go blind eventually. So lose the use of the eye. And most of the astronauts also report that at the beginning of their flight, after a few weeks or what, they need to wear glasses because they can't see very well from close. They see much better from far away because the ocular globe is slightly flattened, so that helps to see from far, but not so much from close. So you see the, okay, that's a few other experiments. This is typically experiment on the brain. I told you about the visual experiment also. We measure the capacity of the eye to see and to focus correctly. We do a lot of experiments also on the muscular, sorry, we're taking the wrong button. I go back, go back, go back, go back. There we go. We do a lot of experiments on the muscle as well, because not only the bones are affected, but also the muscles. So astronauts lose muscular mass as well, because again, gravity is no longer there. So they don't use their legs. They use more their hands, like you would see in the little video there, to move around. So the legs, the muscle of the legs would atrophy eventually. And to avoid that, we ask the astronaut to do a lot of exercise, and typically on a running treadmill. And we tested that treadmill during parabolic flights. You saw this thing moving. The reason for that is that in 0G, again, there's no up or down, but the treadmill setup was so big, so large, that we could not accommodate it vertically. So we are, vertically means on the floor of the cabin. So we had to turn it 90 degrees, and the test subject here, that's a German astronaut, Alexander Geist, was lying during the 2G phase on this elevated mattress. And once you're in 0G, you step forward and you run, but looking to the ceiling. You run up to the ceiling. That was very interesting. I was subject for that as well. And then we had another series of other experiments, another one here about the perception. So when you pinch an object between the two fingers, you have to exert a certain force, at least to counterbalance the weight of the object, so like this. And then you have to, the protocol of the experiment was that you have to move the object up and down. In 0G, suddenly the weight disappears, so you don't need to press it so hard. Actually, you don't press it at all. And this is quite new as well. That was discovered during parabolic flight many years ago, and was repeated in parabolic flight, on board the space station. Very interesting manner also to show the neuroadaptation to zero gravity. I have also a little video to show you. No, there we go. There are other space stations in orbit. This is a Chinese Tiangong space station that was launched 6 years ago. And I was working, before it was launched, when I was working in Beijing, I was working on the program to prepare microgravity research of Chinese scientists there. Very interesting program that they have also. We should have, and I put conditional, we should have another space station called Gateway around the moon in a couple of years. But I put conditional now because you know that in the States they have a new administration under the, how to say, rather erratic leadership of the new president, which was there before. I will not give you the name because it's better to avoid. He decided in his infinite wisdom that maybe it would be a good thing to diminish the credit for research at NASA. Okay, who are we to discuss that, but fine. So that means that maybe this project of the Gateway would be cancelled. And that would be really a pity because it's an international collaboration as well. Europe was building this service module of the Orion vehicle, and then other parts as well. Japanese was contributing the Canadian contributing the robotic arm. Japanese were contributing another module, and so on. But okay, that's the decision of the NASA. And that's how it goes. So Artemis, this is the generic name of the program, will eventually be cancelled or even simplified. We don't know. We have to see in the coming months. Another aspect, a very important thing also, nothing to do with microgravity, but with radiation. There are three typically origin of space radiation. Basically, the first one is solar wind. That gives a low energy electron and proton and alpha particle. Alpha particle are the nucleus of the helium atom, basically, so without the electrons. It's a continuous stream coming from the solar wind. It's dangerous, but it has a low danger level. The second is galactic cosmic ray, the background of the galaxy. It's always there. High energy proton, mostly a little bit of alpha particle as well. And heavy ions, just less until the iron, with relatively high intensity as well. It's continuous, and this is dangerous. When you feel that, you have to go home, basically. Solar particle event, when you have an explosion or one of the solar flares, very high energy proton, it's intermittent, lasts 1 or 2 days, and this is very, very dangerous. The point is that the astronauts floating in space are no longer protected by the Earth atmosphere and the magnetic field of Earth. So whenever they are aboard the ISS, 400 kilometers, they still have a protection due to Van Allen belt, but any mission to the moon or further, we are leaving the protection of these belts, and we are completely at the mercy of any kind of explosion on the solar panel. So typically, on a trip to Mars, these are the radiation that you would get during this mission on ISS is typically 150 times more than the normal level that you have on the surface of the Earth. If you go to Mars, that's 250 times this level. Deep space, so even further, is 600 times, and a Mars mission on a long duration would give you 1,000 times the Earth level. So that means that it's quite dangerous. And here, for that, we do not have any solution, basically. The only solution is a protection. So you need quite a large thickness to protect from radiation. So I would like to conclude here, just in time. Conclusion. Are humans made to travel into space? Clearly, no. But should we stop? Certainly not. Because exploration is in our gene. It's humanity's drive. Imagine that a little baby, as soon as he starts to move, he will go on 4 hands and feet and try to explore his room, and then maybe in the stairs, and then other way. And then when he's growing up, he will explore not only the house, but outside his street with little friends, and will go a bit further. He grows up, he becomes adolescent, he starts to travel, with the parents, and then getting adult, he wants to go further and further and further. And whatever is new and far away, it's inserted inside us. We are curious. We want to go there to understand, to feel better, to go and to discover more. And this is typically what happens also for space research. Thank you.
Thank you, Vladimir, for the nice informations and your enthusiasm in sharing with us these unique knowledges. Thank you. And now we invite Patxi. Patxi will continue with the theme, Research on Earth, Innovations Beneath Our Feet.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be in this lovely country. So I'm in great doubt with all of you. Today I would like to about innovation about our field. I'm going to basically talk about a little bit aviation research and what I do at my day-to-day job. But before, let's talk a little bit of kind of like general agenda. So we're going to have a small introduction. We'll speak about the country where I'm working at right now, which is Sweden. And a little bit of aircraft propulsion, what it is, what we should do. Project that I was heavily involved, called Enable H2, and what is the next generation of projects that we are actually currently working on. So a little bit about me. My name is Patxi, a research engineer, as I was previously presented. There's a QR code if you want to contact me, so feel free to do. Basically, I was in aviation business for, now it's already like 15 years. I did a lot of maintenance in heavy aircraft, and also I was part in destructive tests for aircraft as well, aircraft modifications, and also I did some risk assessment, and I am also a pilot, drone pilot and aircraft pilot. And then I'm also currently now within research within aviation and urban mobility that you will see later on. Okay, so where I'm coming from right now, it's Chalmers University of Technology. We are based in Sweden. We are rated overall as 139, one of the best universities. Within the technology is 112, and European rank is 78, according with the QS ranking. We have theoretically 2 campuses until this year, where we're gonna shut down one of the campuses and we're gonna come back to one. And the university is located in Sweden, which is one of the largest countries by area in Europe, but it's only around 10 million inhabitants. And it's located in Gothenburg, which is that line that you have right there. And this is an overview of the city. So this is the 2 campuses, one is Lindholmen here, and Johannaberg, which is normally sitting. So everything from here is going to be moving right there. So a question for you in the audience. Have you heard about Swedish technology before, or Swedish brands? So these are one of the main brands that mostly, for sure, you will recognize IKEA, right? Yeah, Spotify, for sure. But maybe you didn't know that Securitas was also Swedish. Or maybe you know that Vodka Absolut is also Swedish. There's some other important one. AstraZeneca was 5 years ago, very famous. And also we have SKF. SKF making rollers, and it's actually Volvo is a spin-off of SKF. So and some other companies like Saab, Scania. Scania is no longer Swedish. Scania is now German, but it used to belong to Saab. So we also had a company called Aerospace. This company was very promising, and they were planning to build an aircraft and a hybrid. It originally was an electric aircraft, and then it turned into a hybrid because having 30 passengers on an electric aircraft is extremely difficult. But I put this asterisk in there because it's no longer in Gothenburg. Like 3 weeks ago, they decided to move because most of the investors were in the US, and they basically took all the research and they built into Los Angeles. So it was a big loss for the city, for the Swedish industry. But the origin and the conception, most of the management is Swedish. So one of the main inventions that you have from Sweden, you have, for example, the 3-point seat belt, the dynamite, of course, Nobel Prize, Minecraft, and one of the most important are highlighted in red. But one of the things that we do in Sweden is jet fighters. And it's important to mention that only 6 countries around the world are able to fully design and produce a jet fighter, and among them is Sweden. And when I say fully design, it's like you as a single nation, you have all the capabilities. You don't collaborate like, for example, UK collaborate with another countries, Spain also collaborate with another countries. We do parts. But Sweden does everything. So it's one of the only countries that has the capabilities to do all this. So right, let's go a bit more into topics. Let's go about aviation propulsion. So we need to propel our aircraft forward in order to fly. And to do that, we have the jet engines, and the jet engines burn a lot of fuel, jet fuel, which tends to be very dirty. This is a picture from an aircraft around 60s, 70s. You can see all the pollution that is leaving behind. On its defense, I will say that that's because it has a special system called water injection that increases a little bit the thrust, and that's why it pollutes a bit more, but it's very polluting. So what is the problem that we have normally to address very urgently in aviation? Basically is the decarbonization of the aviation. If you heard about the 2050 goal that we want carbon neutral, and it's because the yearly aviation emissions are just on the rise, and just in 2018, more than 1 billion metric tons of CO2 was released to the atmosphere, and that's the only increasing. So European Union say, okay, we need to do something about it. They created a roadmap to be carbon neutral by 2050, and they were researching upon different technologies. So how can we do this? Like what can help us to achieve it? They were looking at things like improve the technology in kerosene, which is we are already doing that. For example, having SAF, which means sustainable aviation fuel, and other things. But one of the ones that rise more is improved technology in hydrogen, which is 20% of all the kerosene, or all the engines that will be manufactured in the future can contribute to have this goal. So the new agreement was reached. It's called Fit for 55 in JASA, and they basically want to reach 55 reduction in aviation by 2030. And I tell you from now that in 5 years' time ahead, we're not going to reach it. But we keep trying. So different projects were born out of this concept, and among them was the project called Enable H2, because it was chosen to research into hydrogen as a mean of powering these engines, like burning hydrogen rather than kerosene. And Enable H2 was a collaboration between Germany, Sweden, UK, and France. In the Swedish part, which was the one that I was being part of, was mainly generated by GKN Aerospace. GKN Aerospace is an English company that took over of Volvo Aero, which was making engines. And they basically make manufacturing parts for the engine overall, for the turbine engine. There was Chalmers University, where I work with, and some other smaller companies. The concept here was to utilize liquid hydrogen. The reason is because hydrogen is very small. Its energy density is relatively small, so you need a lot of volume to achieve the same amount of energy that you will get with kerosene or any other liquid fuel. So how can we do that? How can we achieve that level of energy demand that we need with the same space? Because you have a very limited space. You can increase the volume of the tanks, but so much, because otherwise your aircraft will be incredibly heavy. So if you put liquid hydrogen, you have more volume in less space. Or sorry, we have like more energy within the same volume. So we decided to go for liquid hydrogen, but that has some problems. So we work around the problems, because liquid hydrogen is liquid at minus 250 degrees Celsius, and that's extremely cold. So the concept that we came up with was, but first, let me give you a quick introduction to the turbine engine, because we didn't work in everything. We only work in one part, in two parts actually. We work in this part here, and we work in this part here. Turbine engine of a typical aircraft, you have this area here where is the fan, is what you see when you load it into your Ryanair aircraft. The spinner is where it's spin, and then here is a low pressure compressor, high pressure compressor, and then here is the turbine. This is where the magic happens, high pressure and low pressure. At the rear back, we have the outlet guide vane, the exhaust, is where the hot gases come out. And no one is utilizing it. It just come out and it's wasted. And we said, that's a pity. There's a lot of energy wasted. We should recover that energy. So we started to think, okay, we cannot recover that energy. We can utilize these structures. And we work mainly with these OJBs. And there is a small channel here that you maybe can see. That is what it links this channel here links the low pressure with the high pressure. So this channel was also important for us. So this is the concept that we came up with. And it was basically, this is a schematic of an engine. So you have hydrogen at minus 250 degrees. And in some very high advanced tanks, that was not our task. So we assumed that someone else did the job. Then you have some fuel lines, and then you have a set of heat exchangers. You cannot burn fuel at minus 250 degrees. It will be a lot of energy loss. So you have to heat it up first. Same happened in the rockets. And to do that, we use a series of heat exchangers. And we pass the fuel through certain, like one in the entrance here in the fan. Then we put it here as well in the ICD. And then it goes to another one where is the exhaust. So this is where the two parts where we worked, in the ICD rig and the TRS. And you can see here the concept that we basically working on. Some guide vanes in the structures where the hydrogen will go through them. And then by conduction, it will get very cold, but the air that is passing around will be very hot. So there will be a heat exchange in there. And then you will actually heat up the hydrogen. That was the concept. And then putting some very large tanks on the top of the aircraft. But that was another part of the project that I was not involved with. So what will happen? So as I said, I work with the TRS. The TRS is this part, turbine air structure. And if you look from this, when you get off in the plane, you look from the back, from here. You will, I think it's not correct order, but you will see this, and these parts in yellow is basically this. And that's called outlet guide vane, or OJV. And you're going to hear it quite a lot from now on. Right, so where it was done in Chalmers Fluid Dynamics Lab, where we have two rigs. And this rig was the TRS rig, where this person here is 1.98 meters, just for give you on a scale. So you have a semi-closed circle. Basically, it's a large fan here blowing air up, and then from here the air goes this way, all this way, and then it moves the turbine. The turbine has one rotating disc, one static disc, and then the OJVs. That's what it means, semi-closed system. 1.5 stage, okay? And it's not hot air, it's cold air, so we do in reverse. We heat up the part, and the cold air cools down the part, and that's how we measure how the heat is exchanged. So our rig is able to go different levels. We can test or simulate different type of engines. We can even go up to very large, but we never did it here. This is Reynolds number. I'm not going to go into there, but kind of like we can simulate different type of engines by approaching the flow conditions to this area, like the Reynolds number and the flow coefficient. We were more or less in this area for this particular project, and that's where we stayed, because we wanted to work for regional aircraft. And this is an engine typical for A320s, 737s. Okay. So the original baseline that we had was typical TR OJVs that you have on an aircraft, which looks more or less like that if you look from the back. And when you have a heat exchange over a plate, you will have some, and then the flow will basically become turbulent at some point. In this graph, what it shows you is basically how the heat exchanges depending on the boundary layer thickness, which is a little bit of the air attached to the surface of the plate, and how the heat is transferred. Okay, and you can see here that when the boundary layer increase, here the heat coefficient increase, and that's because the air starts to be a bit turbulent. So when it starts to be a bit turbulent, that's when the heat increase. So that's a sweet spot for us. We want to be here. So how much can we exchange? How much can we the airflow in an OJV surface? What will be the OJV aerothermal performance? So to measure this, we use an infrared camera to measure the temperature on the OJVs. And then basically the concept was to have this as a baseline, we put water channels inside, and then we measured everything as a static. So you put the measure, everything gets hit, and you make the measurements. We realized it's not enough. How can we improve it? Because we don't have enough heat transfer to actually cool, heat up sufficiently the hydrogen. So we carry on with the project, and then we spoke with the GQ designers and said, how can we improve it to have better heat transfer performance? But we don't want to have too many aerodynamic losses, and we don't want to increase the weight. And then some very smart people, not me among them, which became with this idea. They basically take the same OJB, divide it by 2, and place it at different angles. So you have the same surface area, so you have double the surface area, but you have the same weight, and then you don't have aerodynamic losses as well. So this was where I started to test. I tested this type of pairs. And this is one of the results that we have in the beginning with one of the initial tests. We did here a lot of them. And here we realize is basically that we didn't have enough data. You see a lot of blanks, and it's like, okay, we have some problems with the data. So we changed the way that we pointed at this, because we decided to do this a little bit different. Because they were so thin, because we already divided the OJB, now they are very thin, so we cannot put channels through them, right? But they still have to be heated, so how can we do it? So we decided to illuminate them with very strong lights, heat them up to certain temperatures, and then suddenly shut the light, and then measure how it's cooling down over a period of time. So we did that over several times, a lot of them. And we realized again that we had data missing, so we took a little bit, couple of points. And then realized that if we trigger the boundary layer, which you will see later how it is, it's just by placing a small wire in the beginning, you force the air to become turbulent. Then you realize that you have more turbulence, so more heat exchange. We call that trivet weld. And here you can see the comparison with no weld. You have a lot of blue, which means low heat transfer. And with weld, you see a lot of heat transfer. So we realized that there was a significant increase in heat transfer by having this weld. So we were very happy, and then we started to write, and we realized we have around 40% increase, and the system worked very well, but we wanted to see if the overall performance is good enough. So we tried to figure it out how much aerodynamic loss we have. So we took 2 planes, upstream, downstream, and we took that 6 segments that contain the OGB, and we measure the total pressure. And we realized as well that we indeed have very little losses, and we have actually an increase of 10%. Okay, that was enough. I know that was heavy, so let's go a little bit something easier. So that was the project that I was involved with. That project ended. Then I was told to carry on with another project which was similar, and other projects I'm not going to talk about. But my colleagues are also working right now in very similar concepts. So there are several concepts on how to do a turbine engine more efficient, not only involving hydrogen, or as well involving hydrogen, but there are different concepts. So one of the things, for example, this one is called switch, and it's because it's sustainable water injecting to comprising hybrid electrics. Trust me, I don't do the acronyms, someone else does. But the idea is that you inject high pressure steam into the combustion chamber, you increase the pressure, thus you increase the efficiency of the combustion. And there's a several amount of very cool devices that recollects the water, brings them back to the front, and then you produce the steam again, you put it back, you collect it back. It was very nice. There was a small problem with this project, and is that one of the companies who was involved in here went bankrupt, which was the engine manufacturer. And, well, it's a little bit with a question mark right now. But it's still running. So this is a bit of visualization. You have a small reservoir of water. The water gets heated, and then it gets injected in the combustion chamber, pressure increase, and then you have the exhaust, and then you have these heat exchangers, which condenses back the steam into water and send it back to the reservoir to restart the process. So you don't lose too much water, you know. Another project is called Minimal. Again, I don't do the acronyms, but it stands for Minimum Environmental Impact Ultra Efficient Cores for Aircraft Propulsion. And this project, it happened before in the past. So you want to increase the pressure as well in the combustion chamber. The higher pressure, the higher temperature is better, but the higher temperature, basically you melt. So the higher pressure, the strongest material. So one of the ideas that we had is turbine engines, believe it or not, the pressures are not really high in the combustion chamber. In piston engines are really high. Overall in diesel, you have a really, really pressure. So they try to combine it. And the idea is to have, I think in the next one I have it. On the next one, maybe here. So you have piston engines. This is an old picture. Now we have another concept, which is free pistons. But you have pistons in the combustion chamber that increase the pressure and then send that very high pressure to combustion. So and then that air goes to the turbine. So you increase the pressure, you have better efficiency. You can see here the diagrams, how basically you have the original one and then an increase when the pistons are added. It's a very cool concept. The Italians did something similar in the 1930s, but it was not, it was kind of like detached. They were not joined together. But it's an interesting concept, and I have two of my colleagues working into this, and so far they're having good numbers. And last but not least, we're working in a project called Air Mobility Emergency System, what we call it AIMS. And AIMS is basically a project where we're trying to bring urban air mobility into the picture of technology. And I will speak a little bit more about air mobility tomorrow, but I just imagine there is a new concept of transport system that is going to come to the events within 10 years or something. There are already many overall Chinese manufacturers doing it, but we want to bring it towards within the emergency sector, because the emergency sector is the most plausible way to get social acceptance. Like if I ask you, like, would you like to have a drone flying over your house to deliver you a pizza? You might say yes, right? But we don't live in the US where we have gardens and everything. Most of us, we live in apartments, so that's first problem. But you haven't been exposed to the noise. You haven't been exposed to the downwash with the air in your face. So how sure you are that you will like it, right? We don't know. And so they don't know in the regulators. So the idea that we propose is to have an ambulance, because when you are in an accident, you don't care if it's a drone, an helicopter, an ambulance, you want to go to hospital and you want to be safe. So if you see an ambulance flying to rescue someone, you have a perception of this. You will see, oh, that's good because it's going to save lives. But if you see Amazon delivering goods to the guy who ordered pizzas and you just want to sleep, and then he ordered it at 3 a.m. in the morning and then he comes making all the noise, that's not that good. So our idea is basically not to replace the helicopter, because these vehicles are not as efficient as an helicopter. They cannot carry the same weight. They cannot fly as fast. But we want to be in between an ambulance and the helicopter, because the ambulance is roomy, you have a space, and it's cheap, and it's spacious, because you can have very big ambulances. Helicopters are small in space. They're very relatively small. They're very expensive, very, very expensive. So, but they're very fast, okay? So we want something that is not like a bit more expensive than an helicopter, than an ambulance, and a bit slower than an helicopter, but it's cheaper than an helicopter. So we want to fit in between. We want to complement the system, because right now you only have two: ambulance, road surface, or helicopters. We want to be in between. It's a complement. Yes, use some numbers. Sweden is a country of 10 million people, and we're one of the largest by land, and we only have 6 helicopters because we can't afford more. And the 80% of the population in Sweden live in the south, and in the south there is only 2 helicopters. So sometimes they have several critical calls, and they can't take all of them. They have to say this one needs to be taken care by an ambulance or other means because we cannot fly to them. Or weather, it's not safe to fly. So what we propose is to have an autonomous vehicle that can fly and in a bit more risky conditions than if you carry passengers in them, or remote piloted. So we're working on that. This is the latest iteration that we did of it, which is quite very nice. And we have done some spin-off from this project. We built different drones to test different technologies. Because the idea is to take the technology of the car industry, which is very advanced nowadays, and we want to place them in here. So we can have radars and ladars that you have in your car, which tells you what's your speed, how you should go. It reads the signals. It tells you if another car is coming, if it's pedestrian. Those are the radars and the ladars, very advanced technologies. If we can place them there, make some adjustments, then we have relatively cheap technology to use. And the car manufacturer of those instruments, they're very happy because they will have a new niche where to sell the instrumentation. So it's a win-win for both. And yeah, this is what we want to do. So hopefully by next year, we're not going to have the vehicle because it's extremely expensive to build, and the battery power is higher than a Tesla car. We have problems with our landlords, which they don't want us to have batteries in the building. But we will have some mock-ups and we will have some test rigs to test the motor. So I hope that by next year, I can publish something that it will be nice. And yeah, that was all my presentation. I hope you enjoyed the talk. And if you want to contact me, please do so.
Thank you, Patxi, for your generous contribution to our symposium with all these interesting projects. Last but not least, we will invite Nikolaos. Nikolaos will shed light on the inner and especially on the final frontier of consciousness.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to say that I will do it as briefly as possible. And then you will excuse me that I will use like 5 to 10 minutes to address also the presentation in Greek. Now, well, how should I start? First of all, presenting myself, I did my bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, my master's degree in aerospace engineering. So I'm more towards Patxi. I used to be a PPL pilot. And then I did my PhD in physical and all my experiments in my PhD was done during parabolic flights. So I'm also towards Vladimir, and where we met also. But for that piece later. I don't know how this will sound, but I don't consider myself to be anything special. I truly mean it. Patxi is active in researching right now. I'm not talking about Vladimir. I admire him and a lot. And, but when I was doing my PhD, I started realizing a lot of things. And I thought that I don't belong in neither as an aerospace engineer, not as a PhD. I had some questions that I had to answer myself, first of all. And it's very unusual for people, engineers, to have philosophical questions, especially in my age. I'm not that old. Usually, maybe they have these questions when they were 80, just before leaving this Earth and going to explore space forever. So the question, it's a very nice title, which, okay, I just put it there because it's fancy. But can we really explore the cosmos without first knowing ourselves? Let's start with the presentation. Let's see. Okay, all right. So I will prefer mostly to ask questions than provide answers. So what if the greatest unknown is not out there but within us? That's a very, starting with this question. We can ask a lot of questions, but... And to provoke, Vladimir astronauts extensively for space. Not only astronauts, but also pilots, for example, are trained extensively to pilot. And yes. Okay. Also, pilots are preparing extensively to go and fly an aircraft. But I think we don't take it seriously that we human beings preparing for our internal journey. And I mentioned human beings, and it's funny that I'm saying beings and human beings, because I think in English it's the only thing that we can say that it's a human, it's a being, it's know how to be. We cannot say, for example, an eagle being, or a dog being, or a cat being, but we say human being. So humans know how to be, question mark. So I don't think we prepare for our internal journey because we don't take it seriously. We don't take anything seriously. We just do it because we have to do it. And I will speak from experience right now. For example, most Greek people, and I'm talking about Greece right now because I did my PhD in Greece. Now I'm living in Sweden, and I work there, and my family is there, and everybody's there, and I'm very happy that I decided to be there as well. And so in Greece, when we do a PhD, most people do it because they need to delay their unemployment. When I was actually doing interviews for PhD candidates, and I was asking them, why are you willing to do a PhD and dedicate 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years? I think 8 years is the average in engineering right now in Aristotle University or in other universities in Greece. And they say, well, I have nothing better to do right now. Let's wait for another 4 or 5 years, and it's an excuse. I always consider PhD to be an initiation process. Love to do research, to do something, and that is an example. After 4 years, when you finish your PhD, then you say, okay, let's, you have another idea how the research works, but this is another story. So, actually, I'm taking this as an example of how do we prepare for our internal journey. If we prepare astronauts, pilots, for doing a very important job, a very dangerous job. To be a pilot, it's a very dangerous job. To be an astronaut, Vladimir said, it's exposed to radiation. They spend 6 months in space. It's equivalent for 50 years in having osteoporosis, etc. For us, what about us? We're not important. We born and die, and that's it. The only definite thing, it's death. You don't need to research it. That's it. Everybody going to die in a happy note. Yeah, I'm just happy now, and I'm making a joke. Everybody. If you believe that you will live as you are like now, internally, you are more stupid than me. And I'm not talking religious. I'm not talking afterlife. I'm not touching this. This is another story. This is another conversation. We're talking about, we're starting from the beginning. We're starting from the fundamental theory. So, I think we need to start preparing extensively for our journey, at least for these 50, 60, 70, 80 years. Now, if you are unlucky, 90, 100. If you are more unlucky, 120. But I think that's it. Then, well, the Western obsession, external conquest and technological advancement. I think this is the Western civilization. And I told these stories a lot of time, and I will tell the story again. There is a story out there that when US discovered India, they went to try to become yogi and to find their inner peace. So they went to India and to find the self-actualization. And when the yogi people there in India, they were saying, well, in order to be enlightened, this can take a lifetime, 50, 60, 70 years, and maybe never. Then suddenly they realized that, no, it's not there for me. I mean, so there were no income coming to India, for example. But then some pretty clever Indian people, when they went to the United States, they say they put a box that you use to make photos, instant photos, and they were saying with, let's say, $10, instant enlightenment. So they were a lot of money. So they say, I can go into the box, pay $10 without doing anything, and then I'm enlightened, and that's it. 10 minutes. So really, people, they don't want to invest in anything. This is my belief. They want it in Western, this is the Western obsession. They want it fast, quick. That's it. They don't realize it. To study, it takes years. I said to my students that we can talk about aerodynamics and prisms of light, for example, or fluid dynamics. You have the knowledge just to start understanding. To really understand and know what we are talking about takes years. I'm not the brightest guy, and it took me, and I'm still learning 20 years, 30 years in order to understand fluid dynamics and what is happening, in order to feel it, in order to be within me. It takes time. It's not a 15-second TikTok video. The time span of 15 seconds, quickly. I would like to be rich, to have cars, to have money, to have women or men, or both, depending on whatever anyone prefers. And then, what? From the other hand, ancient civilizations, and among those also the Greek ancient civilization, explored inner space throughout meditation, initiation, and ritual. Okay, it's closer to me. I don't really believe that as well. So, yes, you can explore your inner space, you can meditate, and you initiate a ritual. But people confusing meditation, as I said, with to be a vegetable, to be calm. You know, meditating, it's not to be calm in any situation. Then you are not human. You are sleeping, or you are dead. You have to have some nerve. You have to have something. You have to have some kind of passion. What is missing, I think, it's love. It's love. In Greek we said erotas. It's fall in love better. This is what we're missing. I see young people, because what I'm trying to do is referring to mostly young people. I think young people in heart, not in the age, to clarify that because I see some young people in age that are more dead than me. They are more old than me. They don't have white hair, but they have, I think, they are broken. Because passion is missing. They don't, I don't know why they wake up. They don't know why they wake up every morning. And I don't want to be pessimistic. It's not pessimistic, it's realistic. Because I've heard that once, that I'm a pessimist. No, I'm not a pessimist. So, ancient civilization explored inner space through meditation, initiation, and ritual. Yes, but we have to, you have to find the essence of it at the end. In Greek Orthodox Church, very, very hot subject since we are in Greece, we are very sensitive about our religion. We don't honor it, but we are sensitive, and that's two different things, okay? So we are hypocrites. Well, we have a lot of initiation in a lot of rituals. So for example, the Holy Week, we can fasting for 40 days, for example. Not all, but most. I'm not. And but I'm referring to people that they do it very vividly and they would like to do the whole thing. But they, back in their head, they would like to have some meat as soon as possible because they had enough 40 days. All right, they don't care. And they think that fasting, just to be very, fasting from the stomach is very important. Although they can do so many bad things to their fellow human beings, so they don't care. And that is also hypocritical. But it's very difficult to live a good life as a human being. It's not about to be a Christian, to be a Jew, or to be a Muslim. It's about to be a good human being, which is apparently very difficult, especially in the Greek society, since we are here. I'm not speaking about Sweden or Portugal. Well, we are. Okay. Now, so without inner peace, I think outer exploration can become exploitation. So I don't think that we have if I'm looking for my inner peace, I'm looking for to have something that it's peaceful within me and sleep well at night. And the only thing that makes me sleep well at night is that I remember that at some point I will be dead. And again, it's not pessimistic. It's a drive force that makes me every day to try to live life at its fullest. It sounds stereotypical, but the problem with society right now, it's we're fed up with theory. We have to go to practice something. I'm not a theoretical physicist. I'm an engineer. I try to apply things. I don't understand the theory. I don't have a mathematical mind. I don't understand equations, although I did them a lot in my PhD, but I don't understand. I don't want to understand. 1 + 1, I know it equals 3, but that's it, end of the story. The thing is that I like to be driven with something. At the end, because we went today also to the ancient tombs, there were two judges that they were judging you when you are leaving this earth. And it's not a matter of belief, but I think always we have an inner judge that at the end we have to be proud of our presence here, and we have to make the most of our presence here. And this is what it matters most at the end. It's not someone else telling us if we are bad or good. I don't believe in bad and good. There is not such thing as a bad good. It's a perception. Who is to judge what is good and what is bad? It's saying that you are black, you are bad, you are white, you are good. It doesn't exist like that. You have to start believing in something else. You have to see things from another level. And about the other level also, it's we can talk about 0G and microgravity and parabolic flights, etc. But at this point, I mean, you have to start think from another level. So space colonization must come from an involved humanity. I don't think that we are involved right now. A recent example, I'm not talking politics, just a recent example. You see this thing happen with Israel and Tehran, for example. What happened there? If you take a step back, you can see that, okay, and some lives lost. Just like that, numbers. Really. Do you think that a very super conscious civilization, an extraterrestrial, I mean, not coming from Mars, but coming from maybe a far galaxy away that has the technology to travel and see us, even will care about us, seeing that we are fighting each other? Are you going, if you were a scientist, dedicated scientist, with the questions that we have right now, and you were watching ants fighting together, are you going and say, oh, they have an advanced civilization, eating each other? They can fly with aeroplanes, with rockets. They can go from 0 feet to 100,000 feet and say, okay, you will admire those people maybe that they did that and they sacrificed themselves to do that, which is very touching. But we have to decide as a humanity that we are some billions right now. Don't we have the obligation to start inspiring more people to do things like that in order to waste ourselves in just doing nothing and other people will drive forward? For example, Patxi was telling us during the break that one of the research that he was presented was 2 PhDs, correct, Patxi? To do the ring. The ring that you saw, 2 PhDs. 2 PhDs means how many years? Around 8 years. So 2 people dedicated their lives. I don't know if they're happy now, but dedicated their lives for 8 years to do that ring. Do you know how many people died in order for us to fly safely? And do you know how many people died in order for us to complain that when we have 1 hour of delay, when we fly with safety? Well, driven by ego, profit or escape, I think, yes. A lot of people asking, do you know who I am? If you don't know who you are, you have a problem. You belong to a mental hospital. You don't ask yourself, because this is a typical also Greek phrase that, do you know who I am? We have to ask the police if you are lost. Astronaut training should include spiritual and psychological initiation. I don't know, Vladimir will say that. He's the expert. I'm just saying that maybe astronaut training should include spiritual and psychological initiation. So maybe they could help the astronauts see things differently. Maybe they can cope with that during their long journeys in Mars or in Moon. I know the difficulties, I understand the difficulties. I understand the difficulties from the perspective of pilots, that they are working together in a very confined space. We call it CRM, crew resource management. They spend a lot of hours in training in order how to cooperate with each other, because you don't want to be in an aeroplane that the 2 pilots fighting who is going to land or who is going to take off. They have to cooperate, especially in emergency situations. So I think we should include spiritual and psychological initiation, and maybe we can start realizing that also we need, as humans, we have the obligation, since it's not in our educational system right now, maybe we as individuals, we have the responsibility to start training ourselves. We left our training to other people, not us, because it's easier to blame others. It's your fault, it's not mine. Between couples, it's your fault, I didn't do it. It's your fault that we are not together, or it's not fault that we are divorced. And when we have kids, maybe it's easy because they are young and they are under our influence. It's your fault that you are failing. Everybody, it's not our fault, never. It's like in the university that you failed me in the exams, I didn't fail. So always it's the professors, the instructors, the teachers' fault. You failed me in the exams. The questions were very difficult. I was unlucky. Not that I didn't prepare myself enough. So can we reach the stars without first reclaiming our souls? In order to reclaim your soul, you have to believe in a soul. It's like a psychologist. Psychologist in Greek, it's psychologos. Psycho, it's psyche in Greek. I think most psychologists, they don't believe in psyche, in psycho, so talking about what? We are just bones and flesh, and that's it. You can believe that. It's your choice. I'm not there to judge. You can believe anything. You can believe. Other people believe there are dogs and cats and strange animals. Of course, all this civilization is coming from United States of America, okay, which is I think it's the source of wisdom back there. But I have nothing to do. I have nothing to say because maybe Greece could play a vital role on this. We have the language. We have everything. We give it away because we don't care. That's it. It's a pity. Can we build an aeroplane? I totally believe we have the manpower and the mankind and the brains here to build an aeroplane. But we prefer bouzoukia. I have nothing against the bouzoukia. I'm a heavy metal guy anyway, so I don't care. Can we reach the stars without first reclaiming our souls? I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. I have no idea. Now, outer space is not the final frontier. Our inner world is. I think that we already live in space. Earth is in space. It's not anywhere else. So we are all astronauts. To comfort you that if you like to become an astronaut, you can. I think you can consider yourself astronauts if you like. I don't know, Vladimir, if he agrees or not, but I'm just saying, okay? And it's a very nice spaceship. I like Earth. It has nice seas, and it has also the environment that we can stay in and breathe normally, and we're protected by radiation, and it's very nice. Earth is very nice. But it's nice if you also come with the sense of exploration that I totally agree with Vladimir. If you just came on Earth for holidays, like a visitor, it's boring. But if you come to Greece to Earth to explore, I think it's very nice. You have to make it nice. Most people came holidays. Born, eat, sleep, forever. Sleep forever. That's it. And okay. And most Greeks, they are complaining a lot. And Swedish people are complaining. I think they are very famous in complaining when they are friends with you. My Swedish friends and colleagues and neighbors, I don't feel that. But I don't feel that they never complained. But I fear that most Swedish, if you are living in a big city, maybe they start. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I think they are complaining because they never lived in Greece. That's why. So do you see that I have a passion for my country? So that's why I left. So without self-awareness, all external exploration remains incomplete, I think. And we have to explore a lot of things, and I think the drive and the in-love situation is about exploring anything and do it with a different mentality, doing with a different spirit. Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, so we have time to talk like 5 minutes in Greek. All right, thank you very much. So, excuse me, I will try to address Greek because they will crucify me. Crucify me because I said a lot of things, good things about Greece, and I would like to clarify that. I've born in Greece. I've took my education elsewhere, except my PhD. I worked in Greece. I lived in Greece for 20 years after my master's degree. I appreciate the language and appreciate the whole thing that Greek people and Greek, not friends, because the Greek friends that I have are still my friends, but my Greek professional experiences, I would like to thank them because they make me realize that I have to leave the country sooner than ever. So I would like to thank them very much for that. And it's the first time that I'm saying that. I really thank them. I'm not ironic at all. So, in Greek. Λοιπόν, με ξέρετε πολλά χρόνια. Οπότε δεν χρειάστηκε και να κάνω κάποια ιδιαίτερη παρουσίαση. Νομίζω ότι δεν ξέρω αν συμφωνήσετε ότι πολλά ωραία πράγματα γίνονται στον κόσμο. Και είναι κρίμα να ασχολούμαστε στην Ελλάδα με την μικρότητα και τη μιζέρια που μας δέρνει ως λαός. Αυτό το λέω περισσότερο γιατί κάποιοι δεν το καταλαβαίνουν. Ακόμα και άνθρωποι στο εξωτερικό δεν καταλαβαίνουν γιατί το λέω αυτό. Το λέω όμως περισσότερο γιατί ίσως πονάω πολύ. Δεν το λέω, καταρχήν, γιατί μπορεί να έρθουν κάποιοι και να πούνε ότι ξέρεις, έφυγες από την Ελλάδα, δεν τα κατάφερες και είσαι πληγωμένος. Καταρχήν θέλω να πω ότι δεν ήταν τίποτα να καταφέρω. Είχα τις δουλειές μου, είχα το σπίτι μου, πήγα στη Σουηδία και ξεκίνησα από το μείον, χωρίς τη γλώσσα, χωρίς τίποτα, έτσι. Οπότε και πάλι τα κατάφερα σε πιο σύντομο χρονικό διάστημα από ό,τι τα είχατε καταφέρει στην Ελλάδα. Οπότε δεν είναι να καταφέρω κάτι. Εγώ έφυγα έτοιμος από εδώ. Δεν έφυγα στα 20 μου. Έφυγα στα 48 μου. Στα 47 μου. Αυτό που με στεναχωρεί. Με στεναχωρεί γιατί κάποια στιγμή ο Έλληνας πρέπει να καταλάβει ότι η κατάντια του αυτή τη στιγμή σε όλα τα επίπεδα ευθύνεται ο ίδιος σε αυτή την κατάντια. Και θα δώσω ένα παράδειγμα. Ερχόμουν λοιπόν σήμερα, τώρα, δηλαδή μου αρέσουν τα επίκαιρα παραδείγματα και θα το δώσω και θα το πω. Ερχόμουν τώρα με τους δύο προσκεκλημένους και ήταν και η γυναίκα μου μαζί, με μια φίλη από την Αγγλία που έχει έρθει. Και επειδή αργήσαμε, γιατί εκεί που μένουμε τέλος πάντων, κάποιος άνθρωπος πολύ φιλότιμα με έκλεισε με το αυτοκίνητο, οπότε έπρεπε να τον βρούμε για να ανοίξει. Δεν κατάλαβε βέβαια ότι το αυτοκίνητο πώς θα βγει, θα πετάξει, δεν ξέρω. Αλλά τέλος πάντων, αργήσαμε από εκεί, οπότε εγώ την Naoussa δεν την ξέρω και πολύ καλά. Τέλος πάντων, κάπου εγώ ήμουν συγκεντρωμένος στο να έρθουμε πιο γρήγορα, γιατί έπρεπε να έρθουμε και κάποια συγκεκριμένη ώρα εδώ. Κάποια στιγμή, επειδή ήμουν συγκεντρωμένος, μπήκα σε ένα μονόδρομο. Δηλαδή δεν πρόλαβα να πάω, γιατί οι πολύ ευγενικοί εδώ Έλληνες έτσι, με στολίσαν από πάνω μέχρι κάτω. Οπότε και εγώ άνοιξα το παράθυρο και λέω, δεν το είδα. Μου λένε, καλά, δεν είδες το stop. Δεν το είδα. Ωραία. Αυτή την κριτική δεν την καταλαβαίνω. Εμένα δεν με πείραξε. Εγώ μια χαρά θα κοιμηθώ το βράδυ. Έτσι. Και μάλιστα και τη Δευτέρα φεύγω και πάω πίσω στη χώρα μου. Να πω και την αλήθεια, γιατί έχω και δουλειά, έχω να ασχοληθώ με πιο σοβαρά πράγματα. Αλλά αναρωτιέμαι, αυτός ο άνθρωπος που μένει εδώ, δεν μπορούσε δηλαδή να το πει πιο ευγενικά? Τι μας κοστίζει? Και είναι ένα παράδειγμα. Το έχετε βιώσει όλοι σας. Δεν είμαι εγώ καημένος. Δεν το λέω για καημένος. Έτσι. Τι μας κοστίζει? Τι μας κοστίζει να αρχίσουμε να σκεφτόμαστε ότι κάτσε ρε φίλε, θέλω να τον βοηθήσω. Κατεβαίνω του λέω, βγάζω μια ευγένεια. Ρε παλικάρι, φίλε, το καταλαβαίνω. Τι καρίζεις? Βόδι είσαι? Δηλαδή, και προσβάλλω και τα βόδια. Και το λέω έτσι ομά. Γιατί αυτή η κατάσταση? Δεν πρέπει να προβληματιστούμε κάποια στιγμή ως λαός? Παρακαλώ. Ως λαός. Πού είναι η ευγένειά μας? Πού είναι αυτή η υπέροχη τάχυφη που είδαμε? Και εγώ συγκλονίστηκα. Ντράπηκα, γιατί έπρεπε αυτό, έλεγα έξω. Έπρεπε να κάνουμε ουρές. Ουρές. Υπάρχει τέτοιο πράγμα εδώ, δεν έχει έρθει ποτέ. Ουρές πρέπει να κάνουμε. Για να το βλέπουμε. Πρέπει να τα πληρώνουμε 50 και 100 ευρώ. Την αποτυχία της ναυτικής τεχνολογίας, η Σουηδοί, το Vasa Museum, στη Στοχόλμη, την αποτυχία, είσαι ουρά για να δεις την αποτυχία που βούλιαξε το καράβι και το σηκώσανε. Πριν 300 χρόνια. Και εμείς 2.500 χρόνια και το ελέγχουμε εκεί, έτσι. Και τι έγινε? Άμα δεν το εκτιμήσεις, ό,τι δεν εκτιμείται χάνεται. Και είναι κρίμα. Ας ξυπνήσουμε. Ας ξυπνήσουμε, ο καθένας, δυστυχώς όχι ως μάζα, ως μονάδα. Μην ασχολείστε τι κάνει ο ένας και τι κάνει ο άλλος, πολιτική ή οτιδήποτε άλλο. Ασχοληθείτε με τι κάνετε εσείς. Η διαφορά θα είναι αυτή. Ασχοληθείτε με εσάς. Έχει ευθύνη, έχει κόπο, αλλά κάντε το. Ευχαριστώ πολύ. Thank you very much.
Νικόλαος, ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ. Ήταν πολύ συγκινητικό. Thank you, Nikolaos. Your keynote address was especially moving. Thank you for speaking to both the minds and hearts of us. Ευχαριστούμε. And now, just shortly before this tonight's session closes, we will dedicate some minutes to an interesting interactive debate entitled, "What is the true frontier, space, Earth, or the self?" Chrysostomos will be the moderator.
So, thank you, all three of you, because at the beginning of our symposium, you really touched upon the main theme of the symposium. What's the interconnectedness between space, Earth, and the inner self? Okay, so on behalf of the association, all of us being present, I think it was a wonderful start for all of us to problematize, because I think that's why we're here. So let's start with the parabolic flights. So Vladimir, you showed us in a very nice way through the videos, and we could all see your excitement being in microgravity. And Nikolaos, you have also been in parabolic flights. So I would like to ask you both, what are the feelings? What is you can share with all of us that is so unique to experiencing microgravity? And above all, we're here to see how all this experience that you're sharing with us, we can all apply them to everyday life, because we think that's the notion of research as well. How we can learn from it, be more practical to our daily lives. And at the end, as Nikolaos pointed out many times, be better human beings. So, Vladimir, let's start with you. If you would like to share your experiences with.
Yes, certainly. Thank you for having us first again, and then for this question, because it's a very central question also for most of us as well. What can I say about being in zero G? It's unbelievable. I mean, I remember my very first parabola. I was a young engineer at that time. I was 35, more than that, years ago. Being an engineer and a scientist, I'm very rational about it. So I studied, whatever other people who flew before told me. I watched the video, I checked all the equation, I knew what was going on, I knew the physics behind, and everything was, okay, Phil, I understand it. I know what to expect, I understand it. It was really like I would have mastered rationally with my brain what was going to happen to me. Being in that plane, before the first problem, I knew exactly what I had to do. I had an experiment. I had to push on a button, pull on a string to free a package that would free float in front of me. And I was ready. And then, the pilot announced the timing before the first parabola. 1 minute, 30 seconds, 10 seconds, I was ready. I was standing, holding myself, the back against the wall, and then we go through the 2G. It's heavy, heavy. Unbelievable. I knew exactly what I had to do. I have to wait again a few seconds and push on the button to start. And then suddenly it happened. Unbelievable. All that I knew rationally, I forgot. Because nothing can prepare you to this feeling that suddenly you float freely. Because it's against all that you know since you were born. Because all mankind, all humanity, all of us were born on Earth in a 1G environment. We were conceived in a 1G environment. You know, mother and father conceive you in a 1G environment. You were born. You were evolving. You were always in a 1G environment, always pulling down by gravity. Suddenly, gravity is no longer there. Let me put the correct way. Gravity is always there, but you fall freely. So your weightiness is no longer there. And then you free float. And this is unbelievable reaction. And I start to open my eyes wide big because there's so much new thing. Of course, the same plane, the people I was working with, same environment, but it's completely new feeling that you could move around up and down, not only right and left and back and forth, but up and down. And I remember I was ready there to push on a button, and I completely missed because I started to float away. What was going on? And then it took me, I don't know, 5, 10 seconds, whatever. Within probably I said, hey, I'm going to miss my... And then I start to swim, which is, of course, the thing that you should not do, because swimming in the air does not help. You know, air has not the same viscosity as water, but moving your arms and legs like that doesn't help at all. But everybody does it because it's a natural instinct. You know, when a baby, the first time you put in the water, in a swimming pool, he starts to move like that as well, which is a natural thing. And then you come back to a state, not like a baby, but somewhere in your brain, your mind, it's a new environment that you learn and you react the same way as being in the water, which is a new environment when you're a baby. And it was completely revolution. And it took me, I don't know, of course, immediately my boss was next to me, he flew before, and then he told me, okay, don't worry, first parabola is normal, it's okay, now, you know, get into it. So the second parabola, I was okay, I was worked, everything fine. But then in the evening, I went back to the hotel, we had a meal with, you know, colleagues and so on, and then you go to bed. And then I start to dream about it. It's unbelievable. I completely relived it again because it's so, unbelievable. That's the only word that I came to my mind. It's so unearthly environment, unearthly experience that the brain, to process it, to accept it, to understand, needs to replay the, you know, in slow motion, replay the movie in front of you. So you relive completely that. And I really enjoyed it. It was really tremendous because I start to float again in my bed. I was asleep, but you know, laying there. But you feel that you're floating again like that. Mm-hmm. And I always ask whenever we have a campaign. I was leading campaign. After each flight, we have a debriefing, and I always ask, well, after not the first flight, but during the second flight, so people who have slept after the first flight, the newcomer, did you dream about it? Can you tell us about it? And not everybody would dream about it, or not everybody would like to share it, of course. But from time to time, there was one person, man or woman, who say, yeah, I dreamed about it. It was unbelievable because I could feel my body, you know, moving floating away from the bed, and I was floating freely in. So just to answer your question, it's really an unbelievable environment that you have to live with your, I was going to say with your guts, but with your internal feeling. You cannot rationalize it. Of course, you can explain all the physics behind and the equation. I perfectly understand, and it's obvious, it's simple. But to live it is completely different, which means that to process the reality around you, your brain is not enough. You need something else. You need, I don't know which part of it. Is it soul? Is it something else? But you need to feel it differently, irrationally. And unfortunately, in our environment, this irrational part is often put aside because, yeah, it's less important, because you cannot master it, you cannot control it, but it's something which is always there, which is always important.
And actually, what's really intriguing is what you said, that no matter how much you prepared for it, nothing you can compare to the actual experience, yes. Which I think maybe it's a really good lesson for all of us.
Absolutely, absolutely, of course. All that you know about it is like a model. You know, an equation is a model. It's simplified. Science is very simplifying, basically, because tries to describe a part of the universe or something that is happening in the universe through a model, very simplified model with rules, with equation and so on. So once you understand that, it's good, of course, it's the very beginning. But then after that, it's more. Reality, universe, reality is much more than simply the model that you can get. How do you want to understand the complexity of a full universe? You'll see tomorrow about the size, we'll discuss that tomorrow. With a small brain like we have, brain that we have in our head, which is what, 15 centimeter by 20 centimeter, and we have the pretension that with this little organ that we have, we can understand everything. No, it's not true. We need to simplify the reality to have it absorbed into our brain.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vladimir. Nikolaos?
Okay. I will add, maybe Vladimir doesn't remember. I know Vladimir, my first campaign was in 2004. Of course, Vladimir was leading. And as he said correctly, after the first flight, he was leading a debriefing. And I remember that usually this debriefing is, the head of each team does the debrief. And I was a very young scientist doing my PhD, completely anxious. And so, Vladimir, I think you saw my happiness, my excitement, this unbelievable. And I remember that you look at me, we were in that, in the hangar. So you look at me and said, Nikolaos, you share your experience in the parabolic flight. Because you young men, you are very happy. And I was so even more stressed because, big names from science was there and I said, what should I say? I mean, but this is what describes it. It was an unbelievable feeling, and I will never forget it. That's it.
By the way, our live stream participants are more than welcome to submit their inquiries. And thank you so much for being interactive with all of us. We have one question related to parabolic flights. So how long actually a full session of a parabolic flight lasts? If you would like to address that as well.
Okay, sure.
So this is from the live streaming.
Certainly, thank you for the question. Yeah, one flight is typically about an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending where we go to do the parabola. We do, for science flight, we do 30 parabola, 31, because the crew likes to offer the first parabola, which is counted as number 0, for them to, let's say, to train, to make sure that they have, the feeling of correctly flying this parabola. And then we do the 30 parabola. We do them in sequence of 5. So each parabola you saw in the graph lasts about 1 minute, so 20 seconds for the pull-up of the 2G, 1.8 to 2G, 20 seconds, more or less, for the 0G part, and then 20 seconds for the pull-out phase. So one parabola is typically 1 minute, a little bit more, 1 minute and a few seconds. Then we have a break of 2 minutes. And usually the break we discuss before the flight with the scientist, with the user, how long you want it and so on. But typically we offer 2 minutes, so it's enough time for the science team to get ready, to modify the setup, maybe to change the sample or what. We do next parabola and so on. 5 parabola like that, and we have a longer break, typically 3, 4, 5 minutes, for the people to get used again, maybe to discuss a bit, maybe to change something else, maybe change subject, to have a longer break. And then in the middle of the flight, so after parabola 15, between 15 and 16, we have an even longer break, so that allows the plane to make a long turn and reorient itself to do the next series of parabola, but going home, basically. So the total flight is about an hour and a half, between an hour and a half and 2 hours. These are for the science flight. We opened this type of flight to the general public in 2013, so 12 years ago. Then we do shorter flight with 15 parabola. 1 Mars parabola, 2 Moon parabola, and 12 0G parabola. So that allows the general public, who usually never flew before, to get adapted to a lower gravity, but gradually. So if you go from 1G to Mars G, which is 0.38, so 38 hundredths of a G, and then 12 Moon-G parabola, which is typically 1.6 or 0.16. So they get used from 1G to 0.38 to 0.16, and then we do the 0G. So they can move it around. They feel lighter in Mars G, even lighter in the Moon G, and then we come to 0G. And then again, it's exactly the same. What is happening? And you see them. Of course, it's a very happy feeling because you start to hear the people laughing and screaming and getting floating around and so on, and it's absolute pandemonium. But okay, it's part of the learning process. So it's okay. They do that 1 parabola, 2 parabola, and then the instructor, I was always one of the instructors there, then okay, now try to move. Try to move, but of course you cannot walk, you cannot swim, you have to push against the wall. So I put them in 2 teams, 1 team on the one side, one half on one side, the other half on the other side. I told them, okay, you on the right, you go above, and you on the left, you go below, and then you come back like that. And of course, it never worked because they start to bump into each other. But again, it start to learn the process. So there, typically, the flight's a bit shorter, about an hour and a half or so.
So this unbelievable feeling never gets old, and that's the best thing about microgravity.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great.
Absolutely.
So, Patxi, you shared really interesting and intriguing projects, and really thank you for taking the time to share that with all of us. And the AIMS project, especially the end, I think it illustrates your passion, not just for theoretical research, but for research that is impactful on society. And we all believe that this is the core of research. That's exactly what it should be. Yesterday we had a really nice discussion about sustainability, about petrol engines and electric cars, and you made a comment about the essence of sustainability, that sometimes it takes more money, energy and resources for renewable sources than just delving deeper through research into existing sources. Would you like to share your thoughts about sustainability, innovation, and truly how we can protect Earth at the end of the day?
Sure. Once again, thank you very much for this lovely venue. So yeah, regarding the discussion, we start by defining what's the goal of the research and sustainability. So a few years ago, someone decided that there was too much CO2 in the atmosphere, so we have to reduce it. I don't know if you remember, normally in the 90s we had the ozone hole and there was a CFC, so some of the things that has been done pro of the Earth, they were right choices. But when it comes to the booming of the sustainability as we know it today, I think we can clearly attach it to also the booming of the social media and the networking of the internet, because it reaches more people than back in the 90s. There is also a point to be made, which is money. It's the economics of the sustainability. If you do something sustainable and you have only expenses, but you don't have any profit out of it, I guarantee you there's not going to be done. No one wants to put money into something if you don't get something in return. Like, we all want to be green and nice, but we all want to drive nice cars with air conditioning. Because you can actually be green if you just lower the windows and don't put the air conditioning, and then, just don't lower it too much, because if you lower it too much, you have more drag. But you will suffocate overall in this weather in Greece, right? So there is this point where you have to be sustainable, business perspective, profitable. So in my point of view, and this is a totally personal opinion, I think we have reached a point where we're trying to put sustainability in a balance with the economics, and they always want the economics to win, not the sustainability. So for example, if you take, for example, these lithium car batteries, and everyone is like, let's go solar, let's go wind power, let's go renewable, because it's the way to go, because we have a lot. If you look at the surface, it's true. We have a lot of energy, renewables, but if you start digging deeper and you start chasing the rabbit hole, you go down, then you go to the essence, like how much does it take, energy, resources, economical, and everything to build, for example, a solar panel? How much it costs to maintain it? How much does it cost to build wind power? Not only to build it, but acquire the material also to operate it. Like they have a lifespan. They cannot last forever, and the lifespan of a wind turbine is around 25 years. And the long carbon fiber is not recyclable, and I'm going to put an asterisk in that. It is, but the amount, and this is a clear example to this comment, carbon fiber is fully recyclable, but the amount of energy that takes to recycle carbon fiber is so high that it's not profitable. So you won't recycle 90 meters blade to recover the carbon fiber because it's cheaper just to buy a new carbon fiber and make a new one. So what do? They bury the carbon fiber blades in landfills. Or if they are kind of like good with the environment, they try to build something with it. Or they chop it and then they try to bake some low quality carbon fiber. But that's where we stand. We stand in a point where sustainability fights economics, and the idea is that we want to have economics winning. So if you try to say electric cars, for example, is the new way to go, because also the main comment that you will hear is like, oh, it's cheaper to refuel. It's going to cost you 15 euros to refuel the tank. Well, the European Union is currently working on a new law where you're going to have to pay a surcharge, like you're going to have to pay an extra because you pull in too much energy from the grid when you charge your car. And there's no electricity for everyone because the electricity needs to be produced and it's not free. It costs money to produce. So if you are pulling too much power from the grid, more than us are right now with the air conditioning and the lights, you should pay extra. So in a few years, we're going to stand at a point where the electric car is going to cost exactly the same or very close to have a petrol car filled. So where is the advantage? Oh, I'm not polluting because I don't have an exhaust polluting at the back. Right, but how much did you pollute to take all the tons necessary to produce the cobalt? All the man labor that was involved into it. All the energy to transport it, because we don't do everything in one place. You take the raw material to one country, then you take the sub-material to another country, and you maybe cross the Atlantic maybe 5 times until it reached the car. There is a business behind lithium-ion batteries that was clearly set up, and there's a lot of people benefiting for it. But in my point of view, my personal opinion is, if we will really want to lower the emissions, we will have invested a quarter of the money that has been invested in lithium-ion to make the current technology of petrol and diesel zero emissions. You could have had that. You will have a sub-product that you will have to maybe throw away, but that product that you will have could be actually reused for something like producing rubber or producing some other. So there's always a cycle that you can reuse. But it was decided that it was not pragmatic to do it, and then we went for lithium-ion batteries, and now we have a huge industry in batteries, which has helped us also as well to progress in other technicality, let's say, all the benefits as well. But sustainability, it's very tied to economics, and we shouldn't get distracted by the reality or the beauty, the bucolical beauty of we all want to be green. We all want to be green as long as we make a profit.
That's great, because I actually asked Patxi yesterday, so should I buy an electric car or should I just go with a petrol car? So that was a great discussion there based on your rationale, and thank you for sharing that. So one final question to all of you, and then we will open it up to questions from the audience and of course the live stream. Some key themes: exploration versus exploitation. The question of the debate is, what is the true frontier? Space, Earth, or the self? And actually, Vladimir, the image that you shared and the video from the space station, and you said there should be no boundaries because exactly that's how astronauts function. Maybe it's a utopia for our world, but it looked really nice in the space station, by the way. It was really inspiring. So one final comment from all of you, and we'll take maybe space and then Earth and the inner self. What is the true frontier?
That's a very good question. of course, I will tell you space is the true frontier. We are a strange kind of animals, earth animals. We are lucky or unlucky to have a brain, have a mind, and also have this drive, as I mentioned earlier on, which is innate in ourselves since we are born. Since a little baby will start to move around, crawl on his four hands and feet and move around and try to explore around. And this exploration need, it's not a desire, I think it's a need, something which is completely in ourselves, inside us, push us to discover always new. And for me, the frontier is space. We need to leave our planet because we are destined to leave our planet. You know, a Russian scientist said very correctly a century and a half ago, planet Earth is the cradle of mankind. But nobody stays very long in the cradle, which means that, of course, humanity were born on Earth, but we are destined to leave Earth and to explore other worlds. Where the Moon, Mars, in the future, maybe further in time, other planets. We'll talk tomorrow about if we can go further than that. I don't think so. I mean, it would be already great if we could already explore physically ourselves the planet of the solar system. So that's, for me, is not the final frontier like in Star Trek, but one of the frontiers that we need to achieve. That will take generation, so it's only one person. It's one person as part of mankind, like Neil Armstrong said, when his first step, the first step he set foot on the moon, first step for man, a huge step for mankind, or something like a giant leap for mankind. So it was also for all mankind that we are making the first step outside our planet.
Thank you, Vladimir. Thank you. Patxi.
I don't think that Earth is a frontier, and I don't think we should compete Earth and space. I think actually Earth, it's necessary for going to space, in the sense that we are a planet that we still don't know. We are still discovering new things. We're still discovering new materials, discovering new ways of harnessing energy out of our own planet. And all that what we learn at home is what we need to progress further in space. So we should take Earth not as a frontier, but as a hub, where we all collect the information and the knowledge, and then we gather the knowledge and we use it for positive things like explore further away. And the planet includes our oceans. We're 75% of water, and we still know like 1% of them. And there is so many things that we could actually know, that we could actually utilize on the water, energy system. And even living beings, like we don't even know our living beings. Not long ago, it was believed that nothing can survive 100 degrees, and then it was by chance someone was in the Yellowstone and discovered that something in a very acidic environment can survive, some bacteria. And then they were starting to research more of that. And then they discovered that in the plumes and on the bottom of the Atlantic, that they are like at 80 degrees or even 90 degrees, there are bacteria living there. And that's how that knowledge was transferred to the space station in a way of like, if we have something living at 90 degrees, maybe we can have something living in zero gravity and zero oxygen environments. So we have Earth not as a frontier, but as a hub to collect all our data. And we should push even further in researching on Earth to be able to carry that knowledge into outer space.
Thank you. And Nikolaos, last but not least.
Okay. Yes, I totally agree that Earth is the cradle of the universe, and we are spoiled babies. So if we would like to explore more, we have to start acting more maturely. We have to grow. Otherwise, I think International Space Station, it's enough for us. I think no one will let us go further to destroy more. First, we have to grow, and that's, I totally believe that, yes, totally agree. We can go and go to the sun and live on the sun. Of course, we have to go at night.
Actually, that was a reason that this session was called an interactive debate. with distinct views on what is the true frontier. But I think what we can keep from that is the search for all of us, based on research and based on our experiences, to become better human beings, above all, because that's a priority, regardless of where we go in this universe. And I think this is, a key takeaway from all of us, based on what you all generously shared with us. So thank you all. So let's open it up. Any questions from the audience? So you can pass around the microphone.
Hi. In German. Hello. I have a few questions for all of you, I think. My first question is, what is the risk of space debris during your stay at the International Space Station? If there is any chance of being hit by a huge rock or something, or meteor, I would like to know that.
Yes, that's a very good question indeed. It being eaten by a rock, no, I don't think so, because rocks, well, I mean, depends on the size. If you talk several centimeters, they are tracked from ground, from Earth, so there are special radar following that. And all these objects are well catalogued, and we know their orbit, and the station is actually piloted to avoid this big thing. The most disturbing, the most dangerous thing are the small objects, let's say a centimeter or less than a centimeter. It's a very small, like a dust, typically a micrometer, no problem, because of course all the hub, let's say, all the metal of the outer surface is strong enough to absorb the shock. That's not a problem. But really the problem is the object between, let's say, a couple 100 micron or millimeter up to 1 centimeter or a little bit more, because these are quite a large kinetic energy still, because they're relatively massive, and they cannot be tracked really properly from ground. So the station cannot be oriented to avoid it or piloted one way or another to not be intercepting on their orbit. And this may create some problems. So usually that's why most of these modules that we saw on the space station there, they have also a shield around them. So there's a double protection basically. So the first shield would not completely stop this incoming meteorite, but would simply reduce their speed so that the momentum that they carry would be reduced. And when they hit the inner shield, which is the surface, external surface of the pressurized module, they would be absorbed. It's extremely rare that it would create more than a little problem. Currently, there is a leak on the station, which is now ongoing on one of the Russian modules since several months, I guess. And it's still very, very tiny little hole. And of course, air is leaking to that, but there's enough air on board and there's enough oxygen canister also to replenish the air. So even if we create a little hole, well, it's enough to, let's say, to find the hole and then just to put something against it, because the pressure inside would be sufficient against the pressure, the lack of pressure outside, which is vacuum, of course. So it's not like a submarine where there is the other way around. You have a overpressure outside due to the water and lower pressure inside. Here on the space station is the other way around. So anything that would float against a little hole would simply close the hole.
Okay. Should I move on the next question?
Yes,
or
please.
if somebody has anything else? Okay. Actually, your answer connects me to the second question, is how oxygen is produced in the International Space Station?
Actually, it's not produced. It's still brought up from Earth. There is some, let's say, experiment that can produce, of course, oxygen simply by, separating water, H2O, hydrogen one side, oxygen on the other side. But this is a quite well-known reaction as well. And it's used for doing experiment or what, but not so much to produce oxygen. Actually, producing hydrogen is much more dangerous, of course, because hydrogen is very flammable. But they have another system which is recycling the oxygen. So as you know, air, the breathable air, is 78% of nitrogen, which we do not use, 21% of oxygen, 1% of all the other gas, water vapor, CO2, methane, and so on and so on. The 21% of oxygen that we use, or when we breathe in, we exhale 16% of oxygen. So we use only 5%, 5% of oxygen are used by our lungs and then get into the red cell, the red globule, and then move around all the organs. And we produce the byproduct is CO2 that we exhale. So during each time, each breath, we exhale 16% of oxygen, which is then recycled, but we need to remove the CO2. So we use canister with hydroxide of lithium that fix the CO2, that filter the air, and then we replenish a little bit with oxygen bottle, basically oxygen tank, to replace the CO2 that is taken out of the atmosphere. So this is a cycle like that.
Okay, thanks a lot. And last question about the International Space Station is, in your opinion, what is the most challenging thing living in the International Space Station?
There's so many. Well, I would say there's always, but that's something that the astronauts learn to cope with. There's always this inherent presence of a danger, potential danger, because you're away from, you're above the atmosphere, something goes wrong, you know that you have your emergency return vehicle which is there, but nobody wants to use it. You don't want to abandon the station, because station is your home in space. But it's a dangerous one. Not by itself, but what is the surrounding is dangerous. Space is not made for humans to live in. So you need to bring everything to protect you. You need to bring your air to breathe. You need to bring your food. You need to bring and so on. So that's one aspect. Second aspect is the fact that when long duration, you isolated from your friends and families and your children and so on. So that's why it's always foreseen as well that the astronaut can have regularly during not the day, but let's say during the week, private call with the family, with with the wife or husband, with the kids, with the children, with the close friends, because that's important to keep the link to Earth not as a planet, but Earth as, or let's say, psychological Earth, exactly. And there's always also psychologically as well that you refer to where it's up and down. As I said earlier on, there's no up and down in space, in zero gravity, in 0G. But people, astronauts, would always refer to somehow psychological down part where the Earth is. So the Earth is still attached, very much attached to our reference frame as well. So it takes time to get rid of that reference frame as well. That's not a danger, but let's say something that you adapt to. And then when you come back, the return is all the readaptation for those, not disease, but let's say all that you miss and that all your physiological system actually degraded due to the 0G. And if you do not take care during your flight to apply all the countermeasure, when you come back on Earth, it's quite difficult to readapt in a 1G environment. And actually it takes quite long time, especially for long duration mission. For 6 months, it takes usually several months as well, so about 6 months to readapt completely. For the 1 year mission, it's about the same time as well. So that's also very challenging.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Yorgo.
Okay, thanks.
No, we still have time, but we have 2 questions from the live stream, if I may. So one is for Patxi. I think we covered that, but you may add something to this. Whether sustainability as an issue is exaggerated. As an issue is exaggerated, yeah.
That's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
depends on the point of view. I mean, it's true that we need to become more sustainable. Yes, because take it as example, space station, they recycle everything. They take as much as possible of everything that we have. So it's true that we should learn how to utilize something to the maximum amount possible and extract all the energy, all the essence that we have in a single take, not just 5% and then discard the rest as we're doing now. So in that sense is important, but in the modern sense, industrial sustainability, that is a little bit exaggerated, because you need to have a sense of urgency to justify the expense. So sometimes that sense of urgency is brought up a little bit too much to create a sense of urgency that maybe is not there, just to justify. I don't know if you remember, but around 15 years ago, there was this warning of the rising sea levels. The ice caps are going to melt, and we're all going to be drowned by 2020, 2025, and I don't know you, but the sea level is still the same. That doesn't mean that it's not true. The sea level is rising, but it's not rising because of us. It's rising because from the last ice age, the ice melted, but not because the ice melted you have more water. I don't know if you have done this experiment, but you can do it at home. Just take a glass full of ice cubes, and then fill it with water to the very top, like to the very top, right? And then dry everything around, and then leave. When you come back, tell me if any water has actually dropped out. Right? It won't. It won't, because the ice has more volume than the water, and when it melts, it basically contains the same. That means that if the ice caps melt, the ice caps are actually floating in the sea. So when they melt, they will occupy less space than they're occupying now. But the weight that they are having, that weight is producing more pressure on the ground below them. So when the last age went away, what happened was that we had less pressure on the bottom of the sea, less pressure on the crust. So what is happening now is that the crust is rearranging, and then the parts where had so much pressure and now they don't have is elevating. For example, in Sweden, and I know this because it was told by a physicist, so it's true. In our area, it's rising by 3 millimeters per year. But not the sea, but the bottom of the sea is what is rising. And because the bottom of the sea is rising, the sea also rises. But in areas where the ice caps were bigger, like in Luleå and in the Arctic Circle in Sweden, there the ratio is 1 centimeter per year. So it's true, it's rising. But the reason why it's rising is very different. Huh? So the sense of urgency in there will be very different if I tell you sea is rising because we are being very naughty guys and we're not being sustainable enough, so we need to invest to have more sustainability. Right? If I tell you it's totally natural environment that will happen because 1 million years ago we had ice, now we don't have, and that's why it's rising. So yeah, I think that answered the question.
And that was a nice addition to your first response with sustainability and economics. Now it's sustainability and exaggeration.
Yeah.
Nikos, one more question for you. Actually, it was an epiphany when you shared that we are all astronauts. I mean, we are in space. Earth is in space. So the question from one live stream participant is, if all humans are astronauts, then what should they explore?
A lot of things. They can explore the sea, the forest, but what I would suggest, they start exploring themselves. This is what I would suggest, and they will never bored. Yes, that's it. I mean, I cannot add anything else.
So the most important research project maybe is researching your own self.
I think we have to start with first you, and then this will lead you to do things that you never imagined. It's not that you stay within you egoistically to straight things out. It's just you start within you, and then this search is leading you to places you'll never dream. And that's the fun part. It's the action, it's within you, the reaction, it's outside of you. But you cannot start researching outside of you, and because you don't know where you are going, except if you are, very determined, or I don't know. But you can do that. Generally speaking, since we are in this topic, I could say that you can do anything you want, and but you have to do something. Don't act, as I said previously, like a visitor, like you are in holidays. You are not in holidays. You came here to serve a purpose. You have an obligation for yourself. Do it as nicely as possible and be proud of it. That's it.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. Mm-hmm.
Ευχαριστώ. Taking the opportunity from the last question and your answer, and remembering describing the experience by the astronaut, I was wondering, because I happened to come across people that share experiences that seem extraterrestrial as well. I mean, we are used to be humans and have our senses the way we are used, but there are ways to experience what we experience in this station, also on Earth, that is our cuddle, okay, and to explore ourselves. And this little brain gives us all the potential. And so either accidentally, because some experiences come really accidentally, either by putting effort and techniques, and you said things about self-knowing, meditation, or inner works. It was some days ago, a friend of mine did some Tai Chi classes in China, and there was a time suspension. He saw a his sweat drops staying in front of him like this for some seconds during a Tai Chi experience. And I'm sure everybody of us are given so many gifts as humans to have some experiences that resemble this non-gravity, and yes. So what I want to ask is, you have the space, you are given the space to live these experiences. So what's the way to go for us humans to develop, to evolve, to reach our potential? Because what we know is that we are using small parts of our brain, and you seem to be experiencing some bigger than simple humans. Yeah, that might be my question. I'm not sure. Yes. Yes, thank you.
But you're referring to whom? To everybody? You like to ask a question to everybody?
I think it's between you and Mr. Vladimir, because here is more rational with... I think it's...
I'm irrational.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think that he's quite irrational as well.
Thank you. But,
yes.
But I can start and then
Yes.
move to...
Yes.
So we start from the irrational and go to rational, like a graph. Okay? You agree? Or we all agree to be irrational? All right. Well, it's a statement, so I will just use some of your words to answer this question. Yes, it's nice that your friend experienced Tai Chi, and I know that also some monks, when they pray, they also elevate it from the earth. So what? They're not bigger, they're not, okay. Congratulations. Nothing. So you can spend a lifetime of Tai Chi or meditation or praying, to experience some levitation. I think that's waste of time, my personal opinion. Secondly, it's just an egoistic point of, going towards something. It's just, okay, I will do my PhD in order to be called a doctor. If you've done a PhD to become a doctor, I think I'm not going to say it because I'm polite. Not always. Now, the second thing is that regarding how we are going to be involved as human beings. There is no right or wrong way to be involved. I think it's a matter of understanding. It's a matter of understanding that I think from recent research they found out that the brain, we use full capability of our brain. And also nature, God, gave us the biggest gift of all, life. And we don't use it. I don't understand why, as human beings, like to find other gifts than the gift of life. We don't appreciate life. We kill each other. We kill ourselves daily with stupid thoughts, with stressful thoughts, with thoughts that they have no meaning. And it's one of the signs that indicates that we don't appreciate what the gift was given to us, and like spoiled babies, we are looking for more gifts and more gifts and more gifts. And as we grow older, we just want different gifts. When we are very young, we want, for example, some soldier to play Lego, and then when we are getting older, we want new cars or new wives or husbands, or we constantly want things. That's my irrational take. Patxi, you can.
I will add a little bit into this. Regarding what the statement that you perform, I think we should take it in two ways. So what Nico said, that we use all our brain, I think is accurate. But I think is what your friend experienced was a perception, which means like all what our brain is capable to absorb, we are still not sure. So what the statement that said we only use 5% of our brain is what we were able to read, is what we were able to understand, because we perceive reality with very little inputs. Your vision, your hearing, your smell, your touch, and a couple of other things, right? But we don't know if our brain is able to capture more things. Most likely it will, but you are unable. So sometimes you can try to concentrate and do some meditations in order to try to be a bit more connected to your brain to access that areas that we still don't know. We know that we have electricity, and we have mentioned, and we have a neuroscientist in the audience, so she could actually correct us. But in my point of view, everything comes down to the perception of the reality that each of us has. Like my perception of this moment is totally different to your perception of this moment. We experience it in different ways. It's connected with quantum physics. Every experience is different. So I think that meditation is important. Other techniques in order to be able to try to harness the potential of your personal brain is important to try to do it, but not for trying to reach a goal of being a highest being or being better than someone else. It's just for your own sake, because you want to perceive reality better way. You want to concentrate better. Sometimes we all have to slow down. We live in a frenetic life, so we sometimes it's better like stop 5 minutes. Look left and right, deep breath, and then carry on. That was my comment.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a very good question and quite deep. It touched several aspects. Let me first answer in one way, and then don't be shocked. Don't be angry with me. What you say about your friend seeing a drop of sweat hanging in front of him for a few seconds, as a scientist, I cannot accept it. I say no, that's impossible because gravity is always there. Gravity pulls it down, and you cannot just simply like that. So it does not work like that. It's impossible. That's the scientist in me that answer you. As a human being, I say, yeah, perfectly possible, perfectly acceptable, of course, because it's true, like Nikos mentioned, that monks can levitate as well when they are in a very deep state of prayer and meditation. I fully agree with that, and I believe it certainly exists. Because, as we discussed earlier on, rationality cannot explain everything. So the law of physics cannot explain the entire reality of the universe, of what exists. But that brings to what Patxi said as well very correctly, the perception of reality. That could be altered very easily. You know, the image of Plato, the cave, is that what we perceive as human from the reality is not, we cannot access it. What we can access is our perception of the reality. And what we see are the shadows on the wall of the cavern, of the cave, of the reality. So we see only the outer surface of reality. Reality is much deeper. And sometimes reality brings us new ways. You mentioned the quantum world. That's, of course, one thing that suddenly we realize now, that reality is much, much more complicated and intricate as well. That's one thing. Second thing, you ask also, how can we evolve to make use more of our brain? It was said that we use only a few % of our brain, which is correct. But I would say education is the most important thing. I'm not talking about going to school, of course. Yeah, that helps quite a lot. But it's not sufficient. Education is self-education. Self-education by researching as well. Not as a scientist in a laboratory, but researching by yourself. Reading, talking with people, finding new source of information and so on. So try to enlighten yourself with new experience that you would get from other people. And comment on that as well. You mentioned the astronauts. Well, the astronauts also certainly have learned new things by being in zero gravity, being in space, because you have to adapt to change your behavior, to change your not only perception, but to change the way you think about your surrounding. And this is a new learning that can be measured. We were talking about neuroplasticity earlier on. Well, neuroplasticity, experiment on neuroplasticity, is very simple actually, because what you do, you take an image of the brain by RMI, MIS, RMI, depends which order you put this, and then you take it before the flight and after the space flight. And then you subtract the two, and you see regions who are suddenly appearing. You have new connection, new synaptic and neuronal connection. And this is where this new knowledge is actually imprinted. So it's true that astronauts learn something else outside what we, Earthling, can learn here in 1G. So that's also something that brings additional, let's say, knowledge for the evolution of mankind. And that's also justified, in my view, why we should go to space, why we should continue to explore space. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are 2 more questions.
We have 2 more questions.
Do you have time?
Of course. Do we have time? I don't know. Who knows that?
So yeah, let's take 2 more questions and then we shall conclude. Yeah.
Okay. The first one is for Nikolaos. Is our inner cosmos a microcosmos of the outer cosmos?
If the what?
Our inner cosmos
Yes.
is a microcosmos of the outer cosmos.
Who's asking that? Yourself?
Me.
Why? You like to know that?
Yes. Because it was very inspiring, all this debate about inner cosmos, outer cosmos, space.
What makes you happy? A yes or a no?
Exploring.
Exploring, that's it. Explore.
Okay.
I answer your question.
Thank you. And the second one is from Katerina.
I had one more question for Mr. Pletser concerning the limitations of the human body in space. First of all, if you would like to share with us, I had a question about the limitations you might have had when you went to space. So what was the most bothering or yeah, maybe what did you experience most when you went to space on your body? What was one of those many things you mentioned, because there were so many things that can happen. I think osteoporosis, maybe not so much. But if you would like to share that, and also what you think might be the biggest limitation for the human body if we went to Mars to live there. I'm thinking also about the gravity aspect, so I don't think that could be left aside if we were there, but I would like to hear your opinion.
Okay, thank you. First, I would like to correct a statement that you made. I'm an astronaut candidate, so I didn't go to space yet.
Okay.
It's in my planning. I will like to do it before I completely fly in space forever, like Nikos put it.
Okay, then maybe in microgravity
yes,
also.
no, correct. No, I understand your meaning. Well, the limitation of the human body there are multiple, of course, because our body was conceived to stay on ground in 1G. So we adapted in a 1G environment. If you go, in the history of all the human living species on Earth, well, our very far ancestors were born in the water, in the ocean, and then eventually, the fish and so on became, evolved into what's the word for that? The frogs, this type of thing, amphibian. Voila, this is what I wanted to say. That they would start to live on Earth as well, and eventually become reptiles, and then eventually mammals, and then eventually, it takes, of course, billions of years. So we were evolving on Earth in a 1G environment, which is always 1G environment. So our body adapted in this environment to make it most the better use, let's say, of our environment and the resource in our environment. So the oxygen, the water that we need, and food, and so on. So if we transfer our body into a new environment, like in space, like in 0G, we're not adapted to that. So we have to bring countermeasure to maintain, to sustain life during this long-term flight. This is one side of the research that space medical doctor conduct, and which is very interesting because it produces as a byproduct new ways, protocols for treating certain disease on ground. Like we discussed, osteoporosis is one example. There are many others as well. I was talking also about the eye, the modification of the eye, which is interesting also to understand how the optical nerve function and how, of course, it's known in a normal condition, but suddenly you have subjects, astronauts, who are subject to this kind of disease, and understanding how this disease evolves rapidly gives us also a good model of what happened into, let's say, for human beings over a gap of 50 to 60 years. Now, to come to your question to going to Mars, adaptation to Mars would still be, I would say, relatively easy. But again, I need to give some explanation here. Mars has still a gravity, 1/3 of gravity, of Earth's gravity. So that could be sufficient to sustain life as we know it for ourselves, because our body can function in a reduced gravity environment. No, I'm not talking about zero, but a reduced gravity environment. Scientists really believe that the effect of 0G happens not exactly at 0G, but around 0.1, 0.15 G, around there. At Mars, at 0.38 G, it's still relatively okay. So we can still survive. Of course, problem of radiation is one thing, and there's no real simple solution. So that's why I do not believe in colonization, mass colonization of Mars by like Mr. Elon Musk is proposing. But I believe that it would be more for our children. So the baby that would be conceived in a Mars environment, they would grow, of course, during the pregnancy of the mother. They would still be in a watery type, in a liquid type of environment. Once they are born, they would be evolving in a 1/3, roughly 0.38 G, and then they would grow differently, in the sense that the bone would be probably thinner, but could be longer eventually, because of course gravity is less than on Earth, and the body can, adapt in this new environment, and maybe Mars human children, could grow taller, which means that suddenly humankind would have branching itself into human on Mars and human on Earth, and most likely, maybe it sounds a bit like science fiction, but it's true in a sense, because we don't know yet, of course. But humans who were born on Mars would not be able to adapt on Earth, because their body, the skeleton, all the function would not function into 1G. It's like we would go on Jupiter. Of course, Jupiter has no solid surface, but we would weight, I can't remember how much, but 14 times, 20 times our normal weight. It's impossible to sustain. Imagine then for a Mars Mars child, boy or girl, come back to Earth to visit the parents or the grandparents. It would be impossible for them to live for long. So they would need to lie down for a longer time, longer period during the day and so on. So this adaptation would be made differently on Mars, I would say. That's one aspect. Then, of course, adaptation against radiation would be something else as well. So, but there's plenty of different fields and domains that we need to research.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Thank you very much.
Sharon, final question, and
just a quick question.
Okay, so is the microphone, Sharon? Yeah. And then we shall conclude.
A quick question regarding the eye. You're talking about the difference it makes to the eyes. Tears when you're on a mission. What happens with the liquid?
Very good question. Yeah. Tears will not roll down. They will stay where they are due to capillarity.
And so how does the eye function then if there's
the eye would produce, of course, still tears whenever, if you're sad or whatever, you want to cry, but the tears will not roll down, so they would stay there, would form a little, certain thickness of a big tear on your eye. You just wipe it out and it goes. It's interesting, just to come back to the fact that the water does not dripping. A few years ago, a European astronaut, Italian astronaut, Luca Parmitano, went for an EVA, so what they call a spacewalk, just to work outside on something to be repaired. They always go by two. And he experienced something that was wrong in his suit. So normally inside the suit, they have a water circulation to cool them down, and then there's a heat exchange and the heat is rejected. So that's a way to cool them down, to keep the body temperature normal. And there was a leak in this water system. So the water started to drip on his back, and then by capillarity, because he's bald, so sorry, my colleague who are bald, maybe it's not a good idea to do this. No, but what is happening by capillarity, the water start to fill the head of his back and then coming on surface and so on. Of course, he reported that to mission control in Houston. Houston decide, okay, it's time to go back home, go back into the station. And they managed to arrive at the airlock and then open the airlock. And then he was reporting that it started to cover his face, was already in his eyes. That was still okay. But if it would cover completely his face, nose and mouth, he could have drowned in his suit. So he managed to open the airlock, bring him inside, rush him inside, close the thing, repressurize, take the thing, and then one of the astronauts inside immediately come with a wipe just to clean up his face so he could breathe. Because again, in 0G, there's no reason. You could shake your head, but the water would just, go up, right or left or what, but that's it. It would not go down, basically. That would be terrible. Imagine drown in space. So it's true that the lack of gravity, you have to think about scenarios which are completely different that you are not used to in 1G environment on Earth. And this is what makes it interesting, of course.
That's great. So This concludes our Expanding Horizon session. We'll continue our journey, metaphorically speaking, tomorrow at 10 a.m. with transformative exploration session. So thank you to our invited speakers for sharing such wonderful things. Thank you to all you being present. Thank you to our virtual participants. We hope to see you tomorrow as well, 10 a.m. local time. Thank you and all the best.